Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. It wasn't easy growing up in the 90s. No, who am I kidding? Yes, it was. That's because part of it was with Sonic the Hedgehog cartoons. First of all, we got Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, which was well known for its comedy, odd animation, and comedic Dr. Robotnik, played by Lon John Bradley.
I don't remember programming you to beat me!
And at the same time as that, we got Sonic the Hedgehog, which was also known as Sonic Sat AM because it aired on Saturday mornings. This was known for its dark storyline and badass Robotnik, voiced by Jim Cummings.
I hate that hedgehog. I hate him. I hate him. Hate him.
And the third and last cartoon to be made by Dick Entertainment was Sonic Underground. This show took the comedy of Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog and the dark storylines of Sonic Sat AM and combined them into one show. Having a plot that's very similar to Sonic Sat AM, this one also has a queen named Queen Alina, who is the mother of three hedgehogs, Sonic, Sonia and Manic. Now being teenagers, the three hedgehogs form a band named Sonic Underground and join the Freedom Fighters in a bid to stop evil Dr. Robotnik from conquering the rest of Mobius and of course to find their long-lost mother. And this little video is something that I like to call Sonic Underground, good or bad. Yes, there have been a number of animated cartoons based on this popular icon from Sega, but this one seems to cause the most controversy. And when I say controversy, I mean geeks who complain about every problem that they have with it. I bet there's people out there who actually make videos about it. Yes, out of all the Sonic shows made by Dick Entertainment, this one seems to have the most audiences split. Some people who didn't take too well to it because of all the changes, preferring the original Sonic cartoon for its stranger, sometimes darker, sometimes sillier incarnation. And the other half of it is a small cult following. There are a number of people who do fan art of this show on DeviantArt.com, but a number of people think that this is the worst Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon ever made. And being a Sonic the Hedgehog fan myself, I thought I'd throw in my 2 cents. And to be honest, I think it's really good. Not up there with Sat AM, but still really good. The show focuses on a storyline that's pretty similar to Sonic Sat AM's storyline, but they just added a couple of new things to it. Like for instance, Sonic the Hedgehog being a prince of the realm and him having a brother and a sister who were the same age as him. And we also got to have their mother doing the introduction narration for every episode. None of the other Sonic cartoons have actually done that before. And the characters are still the same. Sonic is still the fastest hedgehog and leader of the Freedom Fighters. And he's still full of himself and very humorous and witty and still says way past cool and let's do it to it. And of course he's still voiced by Jaleel White. In fact, this was the last Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon to feature Jaleel White as the main character. I don't really get why they didn't use him in the other incarnations of the character. And Dr. Robotnik is still the same evil tyrant that he was before. But I personally find him in this cartoon to be a bit of a mix between the comedic Robotnik from Adventures and the dark Robotnik from Sat AM. And by the way, has anyone noticed that that was the voice of Grounder doing his voice?
I never told him when you drove his egomatic hovercraft through the garage door.
In 48 hours, all of Mobius will be underwater.
Then we got to introduce Sonic's brother Manic, who is cool, calculated, and raised by thieves. In every episode, every chance he gets, he always tries to nick something, but Sonic disapproves of it. In fact, every time he tries to steal something, Sonic always catches him in the act and tells him to put it back. That still gets a laugh out of him. And we got introduced to Knuckles for the first time in TV media. I mean, yeah, we did see him in the video games, but this was the first TV series that we actually got to see him in. A lot of people were really glad about seeing him on TV, because none of the other Sonic cartoons before this have ever done that. And then we get to idiot bounty hunters for Robotnik in Sleet and Dingo. And I personally see them as being the new Scratch and Grounder. I mean, Sleet's slightly smarter, but still a little bit stupid. And by the way, did you know that that's the voice of the Brain doing his voice?
I told you, I am not a refrigerator. I am a laboratory robot engaged in an intricate scheme of galactic domination.
Then of course we had Dingo, who was a real total idiot. And Sleet could use a device to transform Dingo into anything. From a basket, to other people, to insects, and even a ball. Now that is a creative idea. And then of course there's Sonia. Sweet Jesus Christ, thank you for Sonia. Wait, what the hell are you doing in here, Sack? Oh, I was just passing by and noticed you were talking about Sonia Hedgehog. Sec, you're not supposed to be in this video. Get out of here. Oh, just let me stay for a while. I won't interrupt you, I promise. Cost me our hope to die. All right. But if there's any interruptions, you're out of here. You won't even know I was here. I hope so. Now, where were we? Oh yeah. Sonia is the only female member of the Sonic Underground and the sister of Sonic and Manic. Unlike her brothers, she was raised by an aristocrat foster family and being given an upper-class upbringing. She hates to get dirty, she's skilled with gymnastics and karate and possesses superhuman strength. I couldn't believe that when I actually first saw it. She's also got a photographic memory. And the way she does that spin attack is almost similar to the Tasmanian Devil's spin attacks. And a lot of people have been getting bugged by the fact that she was voiced by Jalea White. But when I was a kid, I honestly thought that was a girl doing this voice. I just couldn't tell the difference back then. But now that I'm older, I actually do notice it. In a way, I sort of see Sonia as being the underground version of Sally. I mean, they're both like the voices of reason in the show, and they both like try to keep Sonic in line, and they're the ones who normally do the planning and keep calm-headed and all that stuff. And out of the three, I've noticed that she's the most emotional out of all three of them. And by that I mean Sonia has cried the most in this show. I mean, we do see Sonic and Manic crying like once or twice in 1 or 2 episodes, but Sonia just cries most of the time. She has the most crying scenes in the show, which makes her the most emotional. And of course she has a really hot body. Yes, that is true, Sec. And it's a little bit odd how she's drawn with clothes when all Sally wore in Sat AM was boots and the occasional jackets. But then again, they did draw Sonia in bikinis and skimpy outfits from time to time. So I guess it would send the pervs into overtime if they drew her without clothes on. Ahem. And Dalek Sec over here. Go on. Who's talented in everything he does and nothing could be said against him because he's so brilliant. Thank you. And I personally think the changes they did in this show are okay. The characters can still stay the same as they were before, but they sometimes have to change with the rest of the world so that they can be put in new scenarios. Changes definitely have to be made, and I think we know how most people react to change nowadays. I don't want change! I don't want change! Everything has to stay the same! Now having said that, there are some things about the show that I don't really like either. Like Bartleby, for example. Yeah, he's just the typical pompous aristocrat jerk who's working for the enemy and has the hots for Sonia. Yeah, I've seen him a bajillion times before. Moving on. Another thing I'm not too keen on in this show is the fact that not all the characters from Sat AM are in this show. I mean, I know this is a different show, but we could have at least had either Tails or maybe even Antoine show up as one of the freedom fighters again. I mean, Antoine was pretty much the comic relief for Sat AM. I would have loved to have seen him again in this show. And I also don't like the fact that there's no Snively in this show. I mean, from Season 1 of Sat AM, he progressed from being a cowardly minion of Robotnik. Then in Season 2, he'd started to talk about him behind his back and planned to overthrow him. I actually enjoyed that in Sat AM. Come on guys, couldn't you have brought him back for this show? I mean, yes, Sleet and Dingo have tried to overthrow Robotnik in 1 episode, but that's not really as good as how Snively tries to do it. It would have been nice to have seen him again. In fact, out of all the Sat AM characters that weren't shown in this show, despite the Sat AM Robotnik design with a different voice actor, they actually did show Uncle Chuck in the first ever episode. But I'm quite confused by it. I mean, they showed him several times in Sat AM, but only once in Sonic Underground. In fact, in 1 episode when someone builds a de-roboticizer that can de-roboticize anyone that had already been roboticized, I was kind of hoping that Sonic would try to de-roboticize his Uncle Chuck. But nope, we just left way for Sonia's adopted mother. It's sort of like Sonic actually forgot about Uncle Chuck in this show. That's kind of harsh, isn't it? And plus, while Sonic got his same voice actor, Uncle Chuck had a different voice actor, Maurice LaMarche. I mean, I do like Maurice LaMarche, but honestly, Uncle Chuck was fine the way he was in Sat AM.
Simply study the Doomsday Project information I sent you. I expect your analysis at the next command meeting. All his commanders are in on it, Sonic. That worries me.
And while we're on the subject of characters being fine the way they were, I would just like to talk about the SWAT bots in this show. The SWAT bots in this are bulkier, but they don't seem to be as menacing looking as the original ones from Sat AM anymore. The Sat AM ones just look naturally menacing and threatening. As much as I like the underground SWAT bots, I must ask, what was wrong with the Sat AM SWAT bots? They looked so much better. And another thing that can really get people put off is the animation errors. We know that the other Dick Entertainment cartoons have been famous for their animation errors, like forgetting to draw Indiana Joe's face in the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, forgetting to draw creature claws in the Zelda cartoon, and various colour errors in the other Sonic cartoons. This show still has it, like painting Sonia's arms a pale tone instead of pink like it's supposed to be, and sometimes not drawing Sonia's belly button. And there was a music video known as Cosmic Dance, where her stomach is the same colour as her mouth, but then in the other episodes when they show off her stomach, it's the same colour as her fur. I don't get it. But then again, it's the animation errors that Dick was famous for, and I can't really hold that against them. And a number of the songs in the show are good at times, but some of them aren't really that memorable. Some songs like Someday and all that are really memorable. I even tried to sing that a couple of times before, but a number of the songs don't really catch on that much, and I don't know, they're not completely memorable. Though when I was young I had no idea that Sonic's singing voice was actually the voice of Double D from Ed, Edd and Eddy. Who'd have guessed Double D being a really good singer? And another problem is the writing. Yeah, that can be a problem. I mean, some episodes are okay, but a number of the episodes isn't exactly Shakespeare writing, and one or two of the stories are sort of remakes from the previous cartoon shows, and with different endings. And as I said, the writing isn't exactly Shakespeare, or as good as Sat AM's writing, and I'd be lying if I said it is. And another one of the things I do like is having Knuckles and Sonia have a love life for each other. As I mentioned in my top 10 love stories, I think their love story is one of the best I've ever seen. And I find it a real shame that they don't explore it that much. I mean, we only have them explore it for like 3 episodes. I mean, come on guys, couldn't you have done like more than just 3 episodes to explore their love life at least? I would have loved to have seen more of it. Come on guys! And one thing I'm confused about this show is that the people who hate it say that they hate this show, but can't be bothered to point out some of the flaws that were in the other show. So, let me get this straight guys.
It's impossible to build good health these days.
That's funny.
Alert, alert. Organic life form detected. Call father. Substation. Electricity. Interferes with heat sensor. Ignore.
That's funny.
Oh, what are you guys? Freedom fighters or wimps?
Wimps? Freedom fighters.
Sonic the Hedgehog is dead. I'm sorry, Dick Entertainment, you flew too close to the sun.
I didn't include the other renditions because they got the proper reactions they deserved. Sonic the Hedgehog the movie wasn't that popular because of its unnecessary adult humour, but people were glad to see Metal Sonic in it, and Sonic X got an overwhelming reaction of meh. If some people say that they don't like this show just because of the changes compared to it and Sat AM, then I can sympathise with your judgment. But if you're just gonna hate it just because it's different, then just take some time to consider these shows and all that stuff. And if you're someone like me who could see the good and the bad points of shows and movies, then let me point out my top 10 Sonic Underground episodes. The Big Melt. Dr. Robotnik comes up with his most original plan yet, melt the polar ice caps. And at the same time Sonic, Sonia and Manic are on vacation, but it gets ruined when they hear the news. So they have to go to the polar ice caps and stop it from being melted by Robotnik. And when Sonia gets accidentally split from the group, she gets mistaken for a queen by a group of penguins who have troubles of their own. I think it's a really good episode, and the song is quite catchy, and probably one of the funniest endings I've ever seen. 3 hedgehogs and a baby. While in Robotropolis, the hedgehogs find an abandoned baby hedgehog. While Sonic and Sonia search for its parents, Manic is left to look after it and gets in touch with his mothering instinct. But it turns out that the baby is actually a robot created by Robotnik that almost uncovers the Freedom Fighter's sanctuary. This is quite a touching episode, and it shows Manic at his most kind, I reckon. Sonia's choice. After one of Robotnik's plans fails, he comes up with another plan to capture Sonic and Manic and roboticize them in different sides of the city. And Sonia is given the choice by Robotnik to save either Manic or Sonic before one of them's roboticized. I find it to be a really good episode, and it puts Sonia in a real situation where she has to save either one of her brothers, and she doesn't know what to do. And I think her song is one of the best songs yet. But just watch it and find out if you don't believe me. Friend or foe. The band visit a floating island in search of their mother. There they meet the island's guardian named Knuckles, who has been falsely told by Sleet and Dingo that the Sonic Underground is after the Chaos Emerald that keeps the island floating. Knuckles of course jumps to conclusions, and while he and Sonic are battling each other, Sleet and Dingo set their eyes on the Emerald. This was the first introduction of Knuckles, and I think it's a gem. It's always a gem to see Knuckles in a Sonic thing. Who do you think you are? The Sonic Underground arrive in an Arabian village in search of their mother's journal. Sonia loses her memory and comes across some residents named Rafik, but when they're captured, it's up to Sonic and Manic to save them. This was the first time we got to see Sonia have amnesia, and it's also the first time in ages we get to see Sonic dress up as a girl again since Adventures. And it's really funny how they managed to fall asleep. The jewel in the crown. The Hedgehog's overhear Robotnik saying that he may have found a jewel that can lead him to the location of Queen Alina, so Sonic, Sonia and Manic go out to find the jewel themselves and find their mother. But then they discover there may be more to this quest than they find out. I won't dare ruin it for you here, but trust me, it's a really good episode. The Price of Freedom. Sonia, after getting dirty on one of her missions, flips out and decides that she's had enough of her brothers and goes to the east of Mobius. Sonic and Manic follow her after receiving news that Queen Alina might have been there. While there, Sonia is reunited with an old friend, Mindy, and her father. Mindy gives Sonia a fancy new watch that she designed. Unknown to the girls though, the timepiece is actually a tracking device designed by Robotnik. Sonia finds out too late, and soon Mindy's estate is swarming with SWAT bots, and the watches that were made to spy on everyone. I find this to be a good episode because it shows how dirty Sonia could get before she gets really mad and decides that she's had enough of her brothers. And it also shows that there's a price to freedom when you're fighting against Robotnik. Sits as a crowd. The Hedgehogs visit the Oracle again and sends them to an alternate dimension where Mobotropolis was never taken over by Robotnik. But it turns out that Robotnik is the leader of the Freedom Fighters, and the three Hedgehogs who actually live in that universe are tyrannical rulers. So the Hedgehogs must defeat themselves to restore peace to Mobotropolis. I feel this is a great episode because it shows what the power can do to you if it gets into your head and you abuse it. And it's also funny to see the different personalities that the other Hedgehogs have. I won't ruin it for you here, but trust me, Sonic's personality in this one is fun. The Origins Trilogy. These are the first 3 episodes of the show. Queen Alina tells the story of how Robotnik took over Mobius, just like in Sat AM, and how she has to give up her 3 babies in order to make a prophecy come true. And the prophecy being that they would one day become the Council of 4 and defeat Robotnik. And the first episode ends with the 3 Hedgehogs meeting each other for the first time since they were babies. And then the rest of the episodes are just them learning how to use their abilities and learning how to get on with each other. This is a really good start to the show because you can really see the pain Queen Alina's going through, and I find it fun to see how the Hedgehogs get on with each other at first but then start to accept each other, especially the little tiff between Sonic and Sonia in the third part, and the Chaos Emerald Crisis Trilogy. I personally think that this trilogy beats the Origins Trilogy. Sonic, Sonia and Manic's vacation in the beaches is suddenly ruined by a flying fortress controlled by Dr. Robotnik, which is powered by a Chaos Emerald, which the Hedgehogs find quite odd because the floating island hasn't crashed down on Mobius yet. And then it turns out that there's more than one Chaos Emerald, so they go to Knuckles for help in recapturing the Chaos Emerald. But as soon as Sleet and Dingo steal the Chaos Emerald from Robotnik, things go awry and it's up to the Hedgehogs and Knuckles to bring order back to Mobius. These are the episodes that explore Sonia and Knuckles' love life. And while I personally think they should have gone on with it further, I still think this is a really good episode. And we get to see Sonia in a sexy bikini. For God's sake, this is seriously going to be the last time, I promise. But she's definitely hot in a bikini. Alright, if you interrupt me one more time, I'm calling the cops. Haha, joke's on you, they're already looking for me. Ah! I personally think that these are the #1 episodes. But what the hell do I know? Check out these episodes for yourself and you'll probably see what I'm talking about. Check these episodes out and see what you've been missing, or glad you've been missing. I'm Dalek44 and I'll see you next time, folks. Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. Today's video is going to be starting off with a simple question, which is, should the Magic Roundabout be released on DVD? Now Now for like what, two of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, I'll go through the history of this classic really quick. The Magic Roundabout was a French TV series created by Serge Danot, which aired in France in 1964, and it used one of the oldest techniques of film, simply known as puppet animation. But then in 1965, the show crossed the channel and became the UK's most loved children's show of the 60s. The key to this plan was Eric Thompson, who was trusted by the BBC for creating the voices for the English version of the show. Eric didn't look at the French scripts at all. He simply turned down the volume of the original episodes and wrote his own stories to fit what was happening on the screen. And he did it really well, too. Back when I was a kid, I had no idea that this was created by a Frenchman. I just assumed it was an English show. And even when I found out that it was done by a Frenchman, I couldn't believe it. Throughout my childhood, I always thought that it was the Britain's creation. And the characters from the show are so memorable now that I don't even have to name them. There's the big, hairy, sugar-loving dog Dougal, Brian the slow-moving snail, Florence the Christopher Robin type of character, Zebedee the Jack-in-the-Box, Ermintrude the cow, Dylan the rabbit, Mr. McHenry the gardener, Mr. Rusty the operator of the Magic Roundabout, and of course the train. Yeah, she was just known as the train. Yeah. The show's co-creator was Britain's Ivor Wood, who would later go on to become famous for the Herbs, Paddington, the Wombles, and of course Postman Pat. When the show aired in England through the 60s to the 70s, it became really popular and turned into a British classic. So much so that it got its own film titled Dougal and the Blue Cat in the 70s, and then a CGI film in 2005, and then a CGI series for Nick Jr. And the reason I'm asking if this show should be put out on DVD or not is simply because, well, I personally think it should get a DVD release. I mean, many other classics from the 60s and 70s have been getting DVD releases, such as The Herbs, Ivor The Engine, Paddington, and hell, even Postman Pat is being released on DVD several times. So should this classic be released on DVD since many others that Ivor Wood has worked on have been getting DVD releases? Of course it bloody should! This show has been popular throughout my childhood. Even though I never actually grew up with the show in the 60s, I still got introduced to it during the 90s, thanks to VHS releases and reruns on Cartoon Network. And the Cartoon Network reruns I watched were all narrated by Nigel Planer, who was famous for playing Neil in The Young Ones. Now, Nigel is pretty good, but I honestly prefer Eric Thompson. He's just 1,000 times funnier than he is at narrating this classic. But don't get me wrong, Nigel does do a pretty good job at keeping to Eric Thompson's humour, but Eric just had that humour by himself. And the classic episodes really do deserve a DVD release. I mean, hell, 5 of the original episodes got released on the 2-disc special edition of the 2005 movie. So if the BBC could go through their archives to search for some classic episodes for one movie disc, then why the hell can't you look for all of them to put on several discs? And maybe put them in colour and remaster them like you did with Dougal and the Blue Cat. In fact, I'm hoping that Dougal and the Blue Cat's DVD release actually sparks the interest in putting this classic on DVD. I personally think this show really does deserve a DVD release, because it was one of my childhood favourites, and Dougal was always one of my all-time favourite characters. I just love how he always runs around the place, coming up with crazy ideas like sugar canes and running for Parliament and going on holiday with a caravan and becoming a photographer and all that stuff. And you may remember that 2 of my second co-videos were actually based off of Magic Roundabout stories. The episode Caravan being based off the Magic Roundabout story Caravan, and Vote for Daleks being based on Vote for Dougal. The Caravan episode was dedicated to the long-awaited release of Dougal and the Blue Cat, and Vote for Daleks was dedicated to the memory of Eric Thompson, who created the characters that I grew up with. Hell, even one of my Teen TTE episodes was based off of a Magic Roundabout story known as Toffee River. I have that much respect for this show. I'm not sure if they actually do release the episodes on DVD, whether they'll actually put on the French versions as well. Now, I have seen the French versions of the 5 episodes that were put on the Magic Roundabout movie DVD release. Now, it's very different and a lot louder from the English series, but I personally prefer the British version. And for those of you who are not too keen on the Magic Roundabout CGI movie, I personally enjoyed the film. I liked the choice of actors for the characters they had. I especially loved Tom Baker playing Seabad. I mean, who'd have guessed that Doctor Who himself would be a very good villain? I mean, he was both funny and scary at the same time. He was just chilling in the role. And, you know, not just because he's the Lord of Ice and all that. And as for the CGI animation, I do give it 2 thumbs up. But me personally, nothing could beat the classic puppets. They just look really, really good. Especially since it was Ivor Wood who helped Serge Danot make the puppets. And until the DVD release of the Magic Roundabout is ever going to happen, then most of us have to just rely on YouTube or classic VHSs. I've even got an audio CD that features 10 classic episodes narrated by Eric Thompson, including an interview with Eric Thompson himself. Those are the only ways you can ever be likely to see any of the classic episodes until a DVD release is made. Also, if the classic Magic Roundabout series did get an official DVD release, it wouldn't just please the fans who grew up with it like myself, but it would also give the fans who have kids of their own a chance to introduce this to their kids so that they can introduce it to a new generation. So that it would hopefully please some people as much as it pleased me and other people who watched it. So in conclusion, this classic series should definitely get a DVD release. Whether it be released this year or a few years in the future, then I'd definitely go out and buy it. It'll be worth the money. And until next time, this is Dalek44 saying, time for bed. Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. What can you say about Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends? No, I'm serious. What can you actually say about Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends that most people like myself haven't said already? It was by far one of the greatest British children's television shows of all time. Part of it was to do with the myths of the Audrey stories, the original stories by Britt Allcroft and David Mitton, the realistic looking models, except for the people of course, the narration, be it even Ringo Starr or Michael Angelis, and the catchy theme music by Mike O'Donnell and Junior Campbell. There's no doubt in my mind that Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends was one of the greatest children's television shows of all time. But I'm not here to talk about the show, because God knows how many times I have talked about it in Thomas Sember. I'm just here to raise the question, which is, why blame Thomas for a lack of women drivers? The reason that I'm asking this question is because after Christmas, an article in the newspaper caught my eye recently. In fact, I have the newspaper article right here, look. I was actually quite surprised to see this in the newspaper while I was on my little holiday in Centre Park before the new year. I was even more surprised to see that they actually used the Series 2 picture. Imagine that. But if you can't see it very well, I can read it to you if you like. Wait a minute. If I'm going to read something, I'm going to need the proper equipment. There we go. Okay. Thomas to blame for lack of female drivers. Children's favourite Thomas the Tank Engine has been criticised by the Shadow Transport Secretary for encouraging only boys to become train drivers. Slight exaggeration. Mary Craig Mary Craig described the lack of female train drivers in Britain as a national scandal. Bit of an overreaction. And said children's television programmes such as Thomas and Friends are partly to blame. An even bigger overreaction. There are almost no female engines, she said. The only female characters are an annoyance, a nuisance, and in some cases a danger to the functioning of the railway. An even bigger overreaction than the other two overreactions. Just 1,000 women, equivalent to about 4.2% of train drivers, are women. Mike Whelan, General Secretary of ASLEF, the train drivers union which is campaigning for more female and ethnic minority train drivers, said, "These figures show that there is plainly something wrong in this era of professed equality." Slight exaggeration, I'd say. Hit Entertainment, which owns the rights to Thomas and Friends, said more female engines are in development. You heard it from me, so what do I say to this? It's bullshit. Yes, apparently this Mary, whatever the hell her surname is blaming Thomas the Tank Engine for a lack of female drivers in the country. And I think that's really stupid, to be honest. I mean, if you blame a TV show like Thomas the Tank Engine for a lack of female drivers, then that's kind of like blaming Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for encouraging kids to fight with weapons. Though that was the case back then, I heard, from a friend. or blaming Animaniacs for causing kids to use common household objects as dangerous weapons. But I've never really heard that argument made because the show always taught kids valuable lessons, like the useless fat stuff and the wheel of morality and all that. But if you keep blaming kids shows for silly things like that, then God knows what can happen next. I don't know, maybe Homer Simpson would be blamed for encouraging people to be fat, lazy bums all their lives, or maybe Peter Griffin would be blamed for causing people to fight chickens for no reason. Or Doctor Who could be blamed for people trying to build their own time machines. Though actually that would be cool. Or I don't know, people could blame Horrid Henry for encouraging kids to be horrid. Though that would actually make sense, since Horrid Henry is a selfish little brat with no good parts about him. Even though I'm not a fan of the show, I have seen very few episodes on CITV. And seeing the character Henry, I can honestly say that this guy has no good parts about him. He's just a selfish little brat who cares about no one except himself. And if people blamed him for causing kids to be naughty, then I could understand that, because he's horrid in every episode. And though he may get good luck in some episodes, there are some episodes where he just doesn't get the luck he wants. So that argument I don't think would be made, because Horrid Henry shows us that all bad kids don't come out on top all the time. Or hardly ever. So it's my professional opinion, which isn't exactly that professional, that you shouldn't blame a children's TV show for lack of female drivers in the world. And another reason that this argument is stupid is the fact that the drivers are absent from 2004 onwards. I mean, in pretty much every episode of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends from Series 8 onwards, the drivers were barely in it. So, yeah, it's just stupid, because the drivers are barely in the show these days. I mean, we all know that Thomas the Tank Engine is a fictional show, and I think a lot of people forget that Thomas was actually based on a book series called the Railway Series. Because the show has been on for so long since 1984, I think a lot of people forget that it was based on a series of books, so they blame the TV show for little things like a lack of female drivers. Well, a lack of female drivers isn't exactly a little thing, because I agree, all genders should be allowed to drive trains. I mean, if a woman wants to drive a train, then I say let her. Yeah, just let women drive trains. It'll be a great experience for them. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a train driver too. But I wasn't just encouraged by Thomas the Tank Engine to want to be a train driver, no. I was also encouraged by a lot of train documents I've seen as a kid, such as the classic Train series and the Glorious Days of the Express Steam Train VHS, and even a VHS which shows us the Australian railways which still have steam trains on it. So basically, if you are a female and you want to become a railway driver, then don't think that Thomas the Tank Engine is encouraging only boys to do it. Just go out there and do it. If you want to do it, then do it, and if you don't, then just don't. Just don't go blaming kids shows for it, okay? It's not real life, it's fictional. And if you're a man or a woman who grew up loving steam trains, then you're gonna love driving one. I mean, when I drove a steam train years ago, I loved doing it. And I'm not sure I'll be able to do it again because it costs a lot to learn how to do it properly. I mean, mine was just a one-day beginner course, but it just proves that I can do it if I want to. So yeah, let women drive trains. Just don't keep blaming children's TV shows like Thomas the Tank Engine for it. It's just stupid. I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks. Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. Yesterday, while I was checking my emails, I found out some really, really sad news. On the night of the 15th of January 2014, famous British actor Roger Lloyd has passed away. Yes, as much as I hate to say it, Roger Lloyd died from pancreatic cancer at his home in the evening of the 15th of January 2014. Most of you may know him as Trigger from the sitcom Only Fools and Horses, but he's played many other characters in his time. He was Owen Ewart in Vicar of Dibley. He was Barty Crouch Sr. in the film Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, and he even got to play mad scientist John Lumick in Doctor Who Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel. I'll be honest here, when I first saw Rise of the Cybermen, I kind of had my doubts that Roger Lloyd would be able to play an effective villain, because he's mostly known for playing idiots, as we've seen in Only Fools and Horses and Vicar of Dibley. But when I actually watched the episode, he was actually a surprisingly effective villain. He really got into the role. He was just brilliant as John Lumic. And let's not forget that he also got to provide the voice of the cyber controller that Lumic became. I mean, when the hell do you ever get the chance to play a villain in Doctor Who or even voice the cyber controller? That must be really exciting. It must have been a great opportunity for Roger. Yeah, I'd love to work on Doctor Who as a villain, but yeah, let's get back to the subject. I honestly don't think that anyone will ever forget Roger Lloyd Pack's great work as an actor, whether it be in movies or TV shows. I just find it amazing how he can play complete idiots in some things, and yet be totally evil and insane in things like Doctor Who, and a really calm and collected person like in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. It's just amazing what that guy could do. So that's another member of the Only Fools and Horses family who has sadly passed away. It's real sad news for guys like me, or anyone who loved Roger's work. I think I speak for everyone here when I say that Roger Trigger Lloyd Pack will always be remembered by Only Fools and Horses, Vicar Dibley, Harry Potter, Doctor Who, and just Roger Lloyd Pack fans in general like myself. He was one of the greats, and he will never be forgotten. I'm Dalek44, and you will always be remembered, Roger Lloyd Pack. Rest in peace, my friend. Rest in peace. Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. Here's a simple question for you folks. When the phrase plasticine animation is mentioned, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Well, an obvious choice, of course. So, besides Morph, what's the first thing that comes to mind when someone talks about plasticine animation? Another obvious choice, of course. So, besides Morph and Wallace and Gromit, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about plasticine animation? Oh yeah, I forgot he got his own show. So, besides Morph, Wallace and Gromit and Shaun the Sheep, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about plasticine animation? Oh yeah, we all remember him. So, besides Morph, Wallace and Gromit, Shaun the Sheep, and Turbo J UK of YouTube, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of plasticine animation? Oh, forget it, I'm talking about the trapdoor. For those of you who have absolutely no idea what the hell I'm talking about, The Trapdoor was a plasticine animated TV series which was made in the UK during the 1980s. It was created by Terry Brain and Charlie Mills. It was a clever mix between horror and comedy, and the voices of the show were provided by British comedian Willie Rushton, who some of you may remember as narrating a few of the Railway series books. Seriously guys, I'm amazed that Willie Rushton was able to do every single voice for all the characters. I mean, as we know, there's only like 4 characters that ever spoke in the show, and I just find it amazing how he was able to do all those voices in one show. Seriously, that guy had mad skills. The show basically follows the life of Burke, who works for the Finn upstairs, doing everything he wants, whether it be cooking, cleaning, and so on and so forth. He was forbidden by the Finn upstairs to open the trap door because of all the monsters that live there, but Burke doesn't really pay much attention to it, so he opens the trap door sometimes and things come out of it. Monsters and whatnot. And of course it had one of the catchiest theme songs you'll ever hear in a kids show. Here's an interesting bit of trivia about the theme song. We hear a short version of it in the opening and the ending credits of the show, but there was one particular episode where you get to hear the full song as Burke and his friends listen to it on the radio. Now that was a clever idea. And the characters are completely memorable if you know your trapdoor history. The round blue monster who speaks in a West Country accent, Burke, is the main character of the show. He is the steward or caretaker of the Finn upstairs' castle. He is very loyal to the unseen character which everyone calls the Finn upstairs. Burke often goes about his duties with simple-minded glee and enjoys cooking with ingredients such as mud, eyeballs, snakes and worms.
He should have his own cookery program on the television.
You know, that would actually be a really good idea for a kids' cooking show, Boney. Wonder how it would turn out.
Hey kids, getting tired of the same old spaghetti bolognese? Well, you need to watch Burke's Cooking Program. In this program, you'll learn how to cook amazing things that your parents would never have thought of, such as a big yellow thing, worm burgers, gourmet's delight, custard monsters, and anything else that involves cooking with sponge, worms, and all sorts of insects. Burke's Cooking Program, coming soon to CBBC. Burke is often warned not to open the trapdoor by his friends and is strictly forbidden from doing it by his master, although in most episodes Burke does it nonetheless. His usual explanations include
Oh, globbits.
and
Oh, sniff that.
and he likes to smash monsters over the head with blunt objects, which he refers to as bonking, which also brought up one of the funniest quotes you'll ever hear in a kids' TV show.
Right, it's bonking time. I loves a bit of bonking. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, can't remember the rest.
I fucking love that line. Burke's friends in the show include a disembodied skull of unknown origins named Boney, who is also Burke's closest friend. He hates to be moved from his favourite spot, which is basically a hole in the wall near the trapdoor. Boney spends most of the time warning Burke about the trapdoor, but never being listened to, and moaning about various things, which was how he got his famous nickname from Burke.
Mony Boney.
I always loved that nickname, Mony Boney. And Burke's oversized, overactive pet spider named Drut often causes trouble when chasing after worms and other insects.
Oh, I wish Drut wouldn't do that.
Although he was characterised as a male character, Drut produces a litter of baby spiders in the show's second series. Although Drut doesn't really talk, he is recognised for his funny noises that he makes. And the last character we come to is the Finn upstairs, an impatient, grumpy, demanding master of the castle, who rarely leaves his bedroom, and is constantly never seen throughout the series. You know, kinda like Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget. He always has a job for Burke in every episode, and that he shouts downstairs in a booming voice.
Burke, have you tidied up yet?
Sometimes he required Bert to cook the meals, others he required him to clean the castle, other times he'd require him to give him a sponge bath, other times he'd require him to clean his eyeballs, and other times he'd just require him to fix the heater. Even though we never actually see the character in the show, we get to hear some pretty disgusting facts about him, like how he has removable eyeballs, how he's got lumps on his back, how he comes out in big purple pimples whenever he sees flying things, and we even got to see a little glimpse of him in one particular episode of the Trapdoor, but it was a minor glimpse and we didn't really get to see what he looked like completely. It was even revealed in one episode that he has wings enabling him to fly, but we still don't get to see him throughout the show. And I personally don't mind not seeing the Finn upstairs in person. It just lets our imagination run wild of what we think the Finn upstairs might look like. And the other characters are the monsters of the trapdoor, which include Rog, a large pink-skinned creature who kinda looks like Donkey Kong. I don't know if it's just me, but he always did look like Donkey Kong to me. His first appearance was in the 4th episode of the first series, Lurkins. He is quite unintelligent, but he is very kind to Burke and his friends, and they soon become friends later on in the show.
I like Burke. He's my friend.
Other monsters include Bubo, a mischievous small yellow creature who used to be invisible until he was covered by yellow scunch. He occasionally returns in further episodes after his first appearance, still covered in the yellow scunch and therefore visible. Every time he comes out of the trapdoor, he always causes Burke further annoyance.
I hate that little yellow thing.
And another monster I'd like to include is the big angry red Finn that appeared in the very first episode of the trapdoor. When he came out of the trapdoor in the first episode, he chases Burke throughout the castle, but then he was scared back into the trapdoor by looking at himself in a mirror. Funny, isn't it? But he returns in the very last episode of the show. This show had a lot of great episodes. Most episodes were funny, and some episodes were scary. Like the episode Don't Let the Bedbugs Bite was a completely scary episode. Though it was revealed near the end that it was just a dream, so it didn't really happen. But nevertheless, it still scared me throughout my childhood. But never to a point where I stopped watching the show. I mean, I just loved the trapdoor too much to stop watching it. And you may remember also that 2 of my Second Co Halloween videos were based off episodes of the trapdoor. I just enjoyed the show so much that I really wanted to do some episodes of Second Co based on the trapdoor. And I may possibly do some more in the future. I just love the show that much. In the Series 1 finale, Bye Bye Burke, every single monster that appeared in Series 1 come out of the trapdoor because of Burke leaving it open while throwing the rubbish away. And then it goes to a point where Burke decides that he leaves the castle.
I've had enough of him upstairs and cleaning up after all these trapdoor weirdos.
Man, who'd have guessed that Burke would have been pushed to a point of annoyance at that rate? So the episode ends with him walking away from the castle, and it looks like that's the end of the show. But then after the ending credits roll...
Hello? I'm back.
Look at that, Burke is seen with every single monster from Series 1. I love the little image that they show at the end with Burke and all the monsters together. It's almost like the picture of a postcard.
Dear Plonker, Merry Christmas from your loving cousin, Burke.
In the second series finale, the big red fin from episode 1 returns to cause havoc, and he even injures Rog severely on the head by slapping his head against the floor. So in anger, Rog goes after him and fights him. And while they're fighting, it turns out that Rog's been... killed? Oh my god, Rog's dead!
Hello, Burke.
Oh yeah, I forgot he wasn't actually dead.
You great pink what's-it, you scared the life out of me then. Oh joy, Rog's alive!
That's a continuing pattern with the series finales of this show. One minute it turns out to be ending with a sad ending, but then after the ending credits, we see it becoming happy. So with the popularity of the Trapdoor After 2 series, you'd think that a third series would be coming out, so when's the next series coming out? Yes, I find it a crying shame that the show only lasted for 2 series. The first series being in 1984 and the second series airing in 1986. I find it really funny because those were the same years that the first 2 series of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends came out. But nevertheless, this show deserved more series. But I have no idea why they decided to end this show with 2 series. Maybe it was to do with Willie Rushton's death, or maybe the creators ran out of ideas, or something like that. Oh well. Either way, this was still a really great show. In fact, I still enjoy it to this day. As I mentioned in my top 10 Halloween specials, I watch this every Halloween. And I don't just watch it on Halloween, I watch it pretty much throughout the whole year. But every Halloween I tend to have a Trapdoor marathon with my complete collection DVD. It's that much of a great show. This show was a creative mix between horror and comedy, which I like to combine into one simple made-up word simply known as horrody. That's a good word, horrody. Might have to use that more often. If those of you who are watching it haven't seen this show yet, I'd highly recommend it. It was a great part of my childhood, even though I was introduced to it by VHS releases and TV repeats. So this show was created before my time, but it's still one of the great series of my childhood. So if you haven't seen it, I'd highly recommend it. You'll get a lot of laughs out of it. I'm Dalek44. Now if you'll excuse me. There's a certain someone I have to give a bonking to. So as Burke would say, it's bonking time.
You're a fool if you dare! Stay away from that trapdoor! 'Cause there's something down there. Bonking time!
Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. And for the record, please don't ask me why I got this tan. Why have you got a tan?
Silence!
Okay. The tan was a byproduct of eating too much meat, chips and ice cream while sunbathing near a swimming pool at an all-inclusive hotel in Gran Canaria last week. And it was delicious. So now that I'm back from Gran Canaria and had all the sun on me, I need to cool down and get away from this rain that we've been having. But the best place I think for me to cool down and get away from the rain is to visit the Arctic. And go visit the home of that lovable little penguin, Pingu. And for like the what two of you who have no idea what the hell this is, I'll run through the show's history. Pingu is a BAFTA award-winning British-Swiss stop-motion claymation television series. It was produced by the Pigus Group for Swiss television, and centres on a family of penguins living in the South Pole. The main character is the family's son and title character, Pingu. Of course. This show became really popular for a number of reasons. One of them being the dialogue, which is an inventive penguin language consisting of babbling, muttering and loud honking noises, the characters who are really memorable, and the catchy as hell theme tune.
I mean, how the hell can you go a day without humming that tune to yourself? I mean, it's just really catchy.
The main characters of the show are Pingu and his family members. We'll start off with the main character of the show since his name's in the title of the show, Pingu. Pingu is the main title character and the son of the mother and the father. When he gets excited or angry or wants attention, he shouts, that's the word, and makes a microphone-shaped beat to indicate his elevated feelings. Pingu can also change his shapes, like how he morphs into a ball and increases or decreases his total height. Pingu's parents are of course the mother and father. We never really get any names for them, but they're just known as mother and father. Pingu's father is a postman who constantly smokes some pipes in early episodes, but then he quits later on as soon as Pingu's little sister is born. He has a motorised sledge to deliver the mail with the help from Pingu, and Pingu's mother spends her time cooking and does all the work in home. Mother sometimes gets the help of Pingu and his sister, and she always gives them a cuddle when they've learned a lesson. As I said, their names were never revealed throughout the show, so we just called them Mum and Dad, or Mother and Father as a longer word. And now we come to Pingu's baby sister Pinga. She first appears in the episode The New Arrival, where she's similar to a baby emperor penguin, as do other young penguins throughout the show. In fact, her first appearance was just showing her hatching out of her egg.
Oh, isn't she just the most cutest thing you've ever seen in your life? No, serious, she is really cute.
And the last member of Pingu's family is the grandfather, who is Pingu and Pinga's grandparent. There was a time when he'd teach Pingu some new things, like how to play musical instruments, and so on and so forth. He's also a former professional weightlifter. That's quite a surprise, isn't it? The other characters consist of Pingu's childhood friends, such as Pingu, who often persuades Pingu to do wild and silly things with him. Ping, who has a long beak but a shorter head than Pingu. Pongai, who's a penguin that wears glasses and has a short round beak. Pengi, who resembles Pingu, and is often seen going to school with Pingu and his friends. Penge, that's his name, isn't it? Yeah, I'm just gonna go with that. Penge is a green penguin who first appears in the movie Pingu at the Wedding Party. And he kind of sounds a little bit odd. I mean, most of the kid penguins have, like, soft voices, but he kind of has a sort of a deep voice, really. And there's also Punky, who first appeared in the episode Pingu Delivers the Mail. And then, of course, there's Robbie, the grey seal.
Out of all the characters, Robbie the seal was always my favourite character. I mean, he's funny, he's... Actually funny's all I got.
In the first 4 series, he's a bluish grey, but light grey in the last 2. He first appeared in the episode Pingu Goes Fishing, where Pingu, well, goes fishing. At first they were kind of on and off with each other, but then they later became very good friends. In fact, they became best friends. And last but certainly not least on the list of Pingu's friends is his girlfriend Pingy. You could say that Pingy does look like Pingu, and I could see why. I mean, she does have a similar shape, but there are a few things about her that defer her from Pingu. Like, she has thick white eyelashes and a somewhat mushed beak. She first appears in the episode Pingu's Admirer, where she takes a liking to Pingu at first sight. But Pingu's not really fond of her until they have to get away from an angry penguin after Pingu accidentally breaks his window. And the two become boyfriend-girlfriend, and they even get to kiss in one episode. And I think this is one of the cutest love stories I've ever seen in television. And I do regret not putting it somewhere on my top 10 love stories list. Let's just consider it a number 11 spot. And other characters consist of the schoolmaster, who is Pingu's teacher, of course. He lives at a nearby school and rings the bell when it's time for school to begin or end. And there's the doctor, who's the neighbourhood doctor. He lives in a nearby igloo clinic and frequently treats Pingu's injuries, as well as the aid in the birth of Pingu. A number of you Pingu fans may have noticed that there are two different types of the episodes for the first 4 series of the show. The first set consisting of the original theme tune, which we all hum to ourselves, I'm assuming, and the other set which has redone voices, redone music, and a redone theme tune.
So basically, Hit Entertainment took already existing episodes and redid them by having new gibberish and new music in it. And a new theme tune as well, which was originally performed by David Hasselhoff.
Now some people claim that the original version is the best, but for me, I like both versions. I don't really mind that there's 2 versions of original episodes from the original series. It just gives the characters a bit more dialogue, whereas in some of the original ones they didn't have that much dialogue. I just like it myself. And a number of Pingu fans consider the revived series, that being series 5 and 6, to be not as good as the original shows.
Though I think that's mostly to do with the fact that it's not the same guys who did it and there's different voice actors in it now. But I still think it's really good. Yeah, it's not exactly up there with the original, but it's still enjoyable.
And plus there are a number of episodes from the revived series that I really like. Like there's one episode where Pingu gives Pingu a Valentine's card, and Pingu decides to make a Valentine's card for her, but the attempts don't go very well. I won't give away any spoilers, but trust me when I say it's worth a watch. Another episode I really laugh at is when Pingu gets the hiccups, and the whole episode is just spent trying to get rid of the hiccups. And the stuff they come up with to try and get rid of them are pretty damn hilarious. So overall, Pingu is one of the best children's TV shows that I've ever watched, even if the revived series isn't as good as the original 4 series.
So since Pingu's become this popular, and when are we going to get a new series? Excuse me a moment. Sorry about that.
It's really hard to believe that Pingu was cancelled after the 6th series, especially since it was so popular with all those episodes. Oh well, at least Pingu maintains a cult following to this day, since he gets occasional reruns on CBeebies in the UK. Hell, he even got to appear in a Peter Kay music video for Children in Need one time. He really is a popular little rascal, isn't he? As a kid I loved Pingu a lot, but watching it again as an adult, it still holds up to this day. In fact, it doesn't just hold up, but it holds up really well. In fact, when I was a kid first watching Pingu, I used to talk a lot of Pingu talk when I was in nursery. No, I'm serious, I literally spoke Pingu when I was in nursery, and it took my parents ages to get me to stop doing it and talk like a normal human being would. Can you imagine that? If you're a Pingu fan, old or young, then you're still gonna love it to this day. It's one of the most enjoyable children's television series, whether it's a redone series, an original series, or a revived series. You're still gonna enjoy it, and I'd recommend it to anyone who ever loved penguins.
I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks. So, Pingu, do you reckon we should go on holiday? That's what I thought. But where are we gonna go? Oh, good idea. It never rains there. There we go. Nice and dust-free. Oh, hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. And as you just saw, I was just dusting off my Brickster minifigure. So, who doesn't love Lego?
No, seriously, I haven't met one person in this world who doesn't love Lego. Lego has become very popular ever since it was first introduced to the world. Be it either Lego sets, PC games, N64 games, PS2 games, Nintendo Wii games, Nintendo 3DS games, a Legoland amusement park and resort at Windsor and various other places, a set of Bionicle movies based on the original Lego building sets, a set of Lego Star Wars specials for DVD as well as a TV series, and many others. Lego is just so popular today that it's become an even bigger franchise than what it was when it was first brought to the world. And I think it's actually impossible to not like Lego, whether you're young or old.
But what if someone attempted to make a Lego movie that combined every single Lego minifigure together? Well, this movie does.
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. Everything is awesome when we live in our dream.
Because the Lego movie is still in cinemas, and I won't give away any spoilers, I'll just go through a little bit of the story real quick for you. The story follows an ordinary Lego construction worker named Emmett Bukowski. He goes about his everyday life following the rules set by President Business. But one day he comes across a woman named Wildstar who is searching for something at Emmett's construction site. Emmett soon discovers an object named the Piece of Resistance attached to his back, and it lands him in a big adventure with Wildstar and various other Lego characters in order to save the world from President Business, who is also known as Lord Business, from destroying the world as we know it. And I won't give anything else away there because the movie is still in cinemas. So that's the story. So how does the whole movie hold up? Well, for the first full-length film that wasn't a direct-to-DVD Lego feature, this is actually a very good film.
It's a very creative world that they created for this film, considering the fact that pretty much everything in the world is made out of Lego.
Everything in this entire world is made out of Lego. The people, the animals, the buildings, the vehicles, the skies, the clouds, even the freaking water is made of Lego. And any explosions you see, they're all Lego. And the characters are very likeable too in this film. Emmett the construction worker is pretty much an ordinary guy who just wants to fit in with everybody else and thinks that everything's awesome. He was voiced by Chris Pratt, and I'll be honest, I've never really heard of Chris Pratt, but this was the first time I've heard his voice, and well, to be honest, he actually does a great job voicing this ordinary construction worker who thinks everything's awesome.
I am so pumped up!
Wildstar, voiced by Elizabeth Banks, is a tough-as-nails woman who's one of the master builders in this film. And then there's Princess Unikitty, voiced by Alison Brie, a weird unicorn anime cat thing.
Who said I was weird?
Who lives in Cloud Cuckoo Land, a place where there's no rules and where you can do anything you want.
I hate this place.
She even has a hilarious temper on her. I won't give it away, but I will say this. Don't ever make her cross. There's also Batman, the well-known DC comic book hero of Gotham City, and a master builder voiced by Will Arnett. And he's a very fun comedic Batman, sort of like the Adam West Batman from the 60s show. And he gets a lot of funny lines too.
If anybody has black parts, I need them, okay? I only work in black. And sometimes very, very dark gray.
And there's Benny, a 1980-something space guy voiced by Charlie Day. And he's another one of those funny characters, but I won't give anything away from him, but he's really funny. There's Viturius, an old wizard who's one of the master builders, voiced by the great Morgan Freeman.
That man could read the phone book and make it sound interesting.
Now let's talk about the villains in this film. Lord Business is an evil businessman who is the company president of the Octan Corporation under the name of President Business, and a tyrant of Bricksburg. Having a look at this character for the first time in trailers, I almost thought that Robert De Niro would be able to voice him. But instead we get the very funny Will Ferrell.
Fantastic.
And I've got to say that Will Ferrell really does suit the role of Lord Business, because he's one of those fun comedic villains that you're used to seeing in kids' shows and films. Lord Business is the kind of tyrant who likes people to follow the rules as they're told, and does not like creativity by anyone, even the master builders. And anyone who tries to be creative outside of his instructions will pay for it. And his right-hand man is Bad Cop, voiced by Liam Neeson. He's a police officer with a split personality, and let me just say this right now, he is one of the funniest characters in this entire film. Every time I saw him on screen, I just could not stop laughing whenever he said one of his lines.
Hi, buddy. I'm your friendly neighborhood police officer. Would you like a glass of water?
Yeah, actually.
Too bad.
fucking love that line.
The animation in this movie is a mix of the LEGO minifigures and CGI. And to be honest, I can't really tell the difference between both. I mean, the animation just looks so realistic that it almost looks like you're watching a fully animated LEGO movie, rather than it just being one of those CGI cutscenes from the video games. When this movie was first announced, pretty much everyone who loved LEGO was getting all excited about this. There were even people going out to buy the LEGO construction sets based on the movie.
Being a LEGO fan myself, I went to see this movie the second it came out in cinemas right here in the UK. And I loved it. It was funny.
This movie got me laughing all the way through it. The characters are funny, the story's really well written, and the movie even builds up to a bit of a twist and a moral at the end. I won't give it away for anyone who wants to see it, but trust me when I say it's worth watching for. This could have been just another one of those LEGO advertisement campaigns just to get people to buy their products, but it was a very well written story. And it has the right amount of comedy and story, mixing the two together to make it really great. And the jokes they have hit me every time. I've only watched this movie once, and I could find nothing wrong with it. Except for one thing. When it ended. Yeah, as soon as it ended, I wanted to see more LEGO action. This movie is just begging for a sequel. Yeah, so I would definitely say make a sequel to this film. It deserves it. And if they do make a sequel, I'm kinda hoping that they introduce more well-known LEGO characters. Like, I'd love to see some of the LEGO Island characters like the Brits to show up, or even a lot more of the Star Wars characters. Like, I think it'd be hilarious to see Darth Vader in the next film. So yeah, definitely make a sequel and introduce more LEGO characters that are well known to the world. It's one of the best films of 2014 so far in my opinion, and I would definitely go watch it again and then buy it on DVD as soon as it's released.
If you're a LEGO fan, young or old, then you're definitely going to love this movie. So go out there and check it out and enjoy laughs and LEGO. I'm Dalek44 and I'll see you next time, folks. Thanks. Now that that review's out of the way, I can polish off my Darth Vader. Okay. How do these things get so dusty?
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of the team. Everything is awesome when we live our dream.
Would you like a glass of water? No. Yeah. Too bad.
Hey, Postman Pat The Movie. Sounds interesting. Oh, it's a trailer. Let's check it out.
What?
Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. Is there anyone here who doesn't like South Park?
I ask this question because I very rarely run into people who say they don't like South Park. It's become really popular since it first aired in the 90s. This American adult animated sitcom created by Trey Parker and Matt Stone has become very popular since the 90s and is still going strong today. It uses an animation technique that looks quite like paper cut animation, which was the same technique they used for classics such as Ivor The Engine. And while many other animated TV series such as The Simpsons and a bunch of others we don't need to mention who changed their animation style and updated it, South Park pretty much soldiered on as they were, just finishing their 17th season and working on their 18th. South Park has become a really popular show since it was first aired in the 90s.
In fact, the first 3 seasons were so popular that they ended up making a full-length feature film based on the iconic series. And what we got was South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut.
Bigger, Longer and Uncut was released on June the 30th of 1999 in the United States, and some other month in the UK, which I have no idea when it was. but it was basically a movie based off of the popular TV series. Now let's have a look at the story. The main characters Stan, Kenny, Kyle and Cartman go to the movie theatres to see Terence and Philip Ashes of Fire, which stars the boys' favourite Canadian comedy duo, Terence and Philip.
Did you hear that, Terence? I bought it! Yes, just now!
After their entry has been refused due to the film being rated R, the boys pay a homeless guy to accompany them in. And the boys learn a lot of absurd phrases in the film, a lot of them coming from the hit song Shut Your Fucking Face Uncle Fucker, which soon makes the other kids in the town want to see the movie. And after an incident where the kids swear at Mr. Garrison in school and get sent to Mr. Mackey's office for foul language, the parents of South Park are trying to ban the movie from their cinemas, and even get Mr. Mackey to teach them to stop swearing. But this plan doesn't work, unfortunately, as the kids go to see the movie again. After this viewing of the movie, Cartman bets Kenny $100 that he can't light a fart on fire. And after Kenny takes the bet, he ends up burning himself to death by lighting his fart, which gets him sent to the hospital, where the doctors somehow accidentally replace his heart with a baked potato, causing him to die. And as soon as that happens, the parents find out that the boys saw the movie again and ground them for 2 weeks, but they end up grounding Cartman for 3 weeks for some reason. At first it seems like Kenny's soul is going up to heaven, but he is refused entry because of using bad words and missing Sunday church to see the movie, so is sent to hell instead. And while he's in hell, Kenny learns about the relationship between Satan and the evil Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, man, I'm getting so hot. Let's fuck.
Do you always think about sex?
Back up on Earth, Carl's mum forms a group named Mothers Against Canada to place Terence and Philip under arrest and then execute them for teaching their kids foul language. The Canadian government is seriously pissed off with the Americans' actions on arresting Terence and Philip, so start an all-out war until they give them back, starting by bombing the Baldwin brothers. Sheila soon bullies President Bill Clinton into going to war with Canada and executing Terence and Philip in an upcoming USO show. And while that's going on, Cartman tries to annoy Carl with a song Carl's Mum's a Bitch, but is overheard by Sheila, and as a result is forcibly given a V-chip, which is kind of like a lie detector, except it gives you an electric shock when you swear instead of when you lie. That's a very clever idea, really. Back in hell, Satan declaims that if the blood of the 2 innocent Canadians touches American soil, it will be their time to rise and rule the world. And Saddam wants to go up to Earth with him, but Satan is secretly tired of being bossed around by Saddam since he's very abusive, which isn't at all like the real Iraqi dictator as far as I know. From beyond the grave, Kenny tells Cartman that if Terence and Philip die, Saddam Hussein and Satan will rule the world. So the kids of South Park form a secret club known as La Resistance to save Terence and Philip from their execution. And the whole film is just the kids trying to save Terence and Philip from their execution in the USO show, and to stop Saddam Hussein and Satan from ruling the world. For the first and only South Park movie so far, I really do enjoy it to this day. This wasn't just the first South Park project I've ever seen, but it was also the first musical I've seen that wasn't made by Disney. I enjoyed it back then, and I still enjoy it today. One of my favourite parts of this movie is the Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein, who is not the most realistic portrayal of the Iraqi dictator, but it's very memorable and hilarious. I mean, you wouldn't expect a gay lord with a high, squeaky voice to be taken seriously.
Now, everyone bow down to me.
Saddam, I'm the Dark Ruler, not you.
Relax, bitch. You gotta see my head.
In fact, I think it's impossible to not laugh at Saddam every time you see him in South Park. Hello?
Did you miss me, Buttercup?
Oh, you again. I thought I told you never to call me again.
Come on, can we just go out for a burrito? Me gusta burrito mucho.
Piss off, you little homo. Sorry about that. I mean, every time I see him, I just laugh at him all the way through. But he's never comical to a point where he's a pathetic character. And I like how Satan is portrayed in this movie. It's basically showing that he's not really as bad as he puts on, it's just his job, and he's really quite a nice guy when you get to know him. Watching this film from the beginning to, like, the bit when Kenny goes to hell, you could almost treat it as an episode. Yeah, the first 20 minutes of this movie is actually like an episode of the show. So the first 20 minutes of this movie could have been like a 20-minute episode prequel which would build up to the movie, but they just put it in the movie. The animation in the movie is pretty much the same as they used in the show, except they have CGI elements in it, like fire, explosions, even most of the backgrounds of hell are CGI. And some of you may think that these animation styles won't work very well together, considering how it didn't work in the Top Cat movie, but surprisingly, the CGI goes really well with the animation they used for the show in the movie. I mean, everything that you see that's in CGI, like the explosions and the fire and the majority of hell, are really good. They surprisingly really do blend well with the animation style from the show. And effects like the explosions and the fires and the majority of hell still look like they're really there to me. And the songs are really memorable too. It's got a lot of classic songs such as Mountain Town, Uncle Fucker, Sneezing Kui, Hell Isn't Good, which for some reason isn't on the soundtrack CD, that's kind of odd. Blame Canada, Cosmo's a Bitch, What Would Blind Boy Tonner Do, Up There, La Resistance, I Could Change, and I'm Super, which is sung by Big Gay Al. And my favourite songs from this movie are Uncle Fucker, Cosmo's a Bitch, What Would Blind Boy Tonner Do, Up There, and I Could Change. Those are just my favourite songs here. In fact, I loved them so much that I ended up getting the soundtrack CD before the movie. This movie also has a lot of funny quotes in it, such as,
"Yeah, you like that, don't you, bitch?"
as well as,
"Let's kill us some goddamn Australians!"
When I think we're fighting Canadians.
Canadians, Australians, what's the difference?
and,
Yeah, Canadians.
and of course who could forget this classic line.
You some people gonna die?
I suppose if I do have one nitpick about this film, it's the fact that some of the characters from the show don't get much screen time in it. I mean, yeah, we do get to see Ned, Jimbo, Mr. Garrison, Mr. Mackey, Chef, and a lot of the other characters. But have you ever noticed that characters like Officer Barbrady don't get much screen time in the movie? I mean, yeah, we did see him get to serve the army, but he barely has a line in this film. In fact, I don't remember one scene from this movie where he actually did speak. I mean, come on guys, couldn't you give him at least one speaking role in this movie? But that's just nitpicking, and it doesn't really come close to ruining this good comedy film.
I never got to see this film in the cinemas, but I ended up getting the VHS version of it, and then later on the DVD. And I still love it to this day. It's still freaking hilarious.
Yeah, I was introduced to this movie when it came out on VHS, because I never really knew about it when it was in the cinemas. In fact, I rarely knew anything about South Park back then. The only things I knew about it was Kenny getting killed off in pretty much every single episode. So I guess you could say that this movie introduced me to South Park properly. Yeah, it's true, if it wasn't for the movie I might not have got into South Park at all. If you haven't seen this movie yet, I definitely recommend it. You'll get a lot of laughs out of it. And Saddam Hussein will have you laughing all the way through, if you love people taking the piss out of Saddam Hussein. I got this on DVD, I think, last year, and I still enjoy watching it to this day. And between you and me, I tend to always re-watch the moments with Saddam and Satan in it, because those are my favourite parts of the film. Those are the moments that I always look forward to. So if you're a South Park fan and haven't seen this movie yet, definitely go check it out. It's got lots of laughs, memorable songs, and a whole variety of characters that everybody knows and loves. And if you're a hardcore South Park fan, it's definitely worth getting it on DVD. As I said, you'll get a lot of laughs out of it if you loved the show. So I would definitely go and watch it if you're a hardcore South Park fan.
I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time. Hello?
Nah, come on, guys! Give me a break!
Why does that guy keep getting my number?
Yeah, you like that, don't you, bitch?
Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. And if you're a Doctor Who fan like I am, then you'll most probably have seen the latest teaser trailer for Doctor Who Series 8.
Yep, they released the teaser trailer for Doctor Who Series 8. It had no spoilers or anything, it was short, sweet and to the point. The Doctor will return to our screens this August. But before that trailer came out, there had been a lot of rumours going around about what the episodes would be about and which monsters would be included.
And that brings me to my main topic of this video, which is the Daleks' return for this year.
Yeah, a number of people have been getting pretty angry and making rant videos about why the Daleks shouldn't come back this year. Now, a lot of people have been saying that the Daleks have been overused since they came back in 2005, and I can see your point. I mean, they have been in every single series except for Series 6 since the return of the Doctor Who show in 2005. That doesn't count, it was just there to serve the plot. And yeah, I know they have been seen in every single series of Doctor Who since the show came back in 2005. Like, they were in Dalek, Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways in Series 1, they were in Army of Ghosts and Doomsday in Series 2, they were in Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks in Series 3, they were in The Stolen Earth and Journey's End in Series 4, they had a short cameo in Waters of Mars, they were mentioned and Dalek ships were seen in The End of Time Part 2, they were in Victory of the Daleks, The Pandorica Opens and The Big Bang in Series 5, and I would talk about their appearance in Series 6 in the Wedding with River Song, but like I said, it doesn't really count. That Dalek was just there to serve the plot. And they were in Asylum of the Daleks in Series 7, the Doctor Who 50th Anniversary movie, and the Time of the Doctor Christmas special. And for those of you who say that the Daleks have been overused and they should be given a break, I can see your point with that. I mean, they have been in every single series except for one, which was just a cameo. And it was said that the BBC was originally going to give the Daleks a break so they could come back fresh and new the year after, or some other year after, probably, I don't know. But it was at Peter Capaldi's request that he faces the Daleks this year. Yeah, we all know it was Peter Capaldi's request to fight the Daleks this year. And I guess I could see why he would make that choice. I mean, some actors wouldn't feel like they're part of Doctor Who until they fought the Daleks. So my guess is he couldn't wait to face the Daleks. And I'm honestly looking forward to seeing how Peter Capaldi's Doctor will react against the Daleks. I mean, we've seen some of the other Doctors and how they react against the Daleks, from the classic series to the new series. And I really love how terrified and most of the time angry Christopher Eccleston's Doctor got when the Daleks came back in Series 1. I love how David Tennant was sometimes cool and mostly aggressive towards the Daleks when he was the Doctor. And I love how angry and aggressive Matt Smith's Doctor was against the Daleks in Victory of the Daleks. I mean, when's the last time you ever saw the Doctor hitting a Dalek with a big wrench? That was pretty badass. So yeah, I actually am looking forward to seeing how Peter Capaldi's Doctor will react against the Daleks. Even though I didn't really expect them to come back this year. But I honestly don't mind them coming back this year.
You suck!
Hear me out. And yeah, people do say that the Daleks should be given a break this year since they've been used in every single series since the show came back. But, like I said, I don't mind them showing up this year. I'm just hoping that they get better screen time than they did in Asylum of the Daleks. I mean, yeah, that was a pretty good episode, and it was pretty badass and scary to see insane Daleks and how their insanity has risen since they fought the Doctor. But, to be honest, the Daleks didn't really get much screen time in that episode. And it's kind of funny that they didn't, since their name was in the title of the freaking episode. And I know they did show up in the 50th Anniversary movie, but technically they weren't exactly the main villains of that special. It was just showing Daleks from the past. And I'll admit it was awesome to see the Time War, even if it was just the last day. I mean, we did get the Doctor talking about it, and the Daleks talking about it every now and then in the new series. And we got to see a little glimpse of it in The End of Time Part 2. But until the 50th Anniversary movie, we never really got to see the actual battle of the Time War. So the Day of the Doctor was the first time we got to saw the actual Battle of the Time War, even if it was just the last day. And those Dalek ship above Gallifrey look freaking awesome. I'm not sure if any of you have noticed this, but the Dalek ships in the 50th Anniversary movie have more detail than they did when they first appeared in Series 1. So yeah, the BBC team obviously went a mile ahead to make the ships look more realistic and give them more detail in that special. And I know they were technically main villains in the time of the Doctor, since they were the longest species to stay on Trenzalore. I mean, we got like the Cybermen, the Sontarans, and the Silents show up in that episode, and even the Weeping Angels. But you could say that the Daleks were the main villains of that story, because they stayed around the longest, including the Church. But like Asylum of the Daleks, they didn't get that much screen time, and I think they probably would have if the special was an extra 10 or 15 minutes longer than it was. I mean, there was a lot going on in that Christmas special, and it would have been nice to have had an extra 10 or 15 minutes so we could see a bit more of it. Yeah, there was a lot going on in that one. So I honestly don't mind that the Daleks are coming back this year.
And if it is a two-part episode like they say it's going to be, I'm at least hoping that they give the Daleks a bit more credit this time. Unlike the Asylum of the Daleks episode.
We all know that the new Power Ranger Daleks, as fans call them, aren't as good as the Time Warp Daleks, as I like to call them. But I honestly like the new Daleks. Yeah, I think these new Daleks look pretty cool. I honestly think it's really scary how they got those real eyeballs in their eye stalks. And they did kind of upgrade them in Asylum of the Daleks by making the red and blue Daleks darker and more metallic looking. And they were kind of overblown in the Time of the Doctor. I mean, we didn't get to see one of them, but I'm assuming that the Supreme Dalek that was talking to the Doctor from the Dalek ship might have been the Dalek Supreme from the New Paradigm. But we never actually got to see them in that episode. We just got the Time Warp Daleks, which is pretty cool. So I'm hoping that the new Daleks as well as the Time Warp Daleks show up in this year's series. Because even though the new Daleks aren't exactly as good as the Time Warp Daleks, I don't think they deserve to be forgotten or gone forever. Plus, I love how in Series 7 onwards, how the Time Warp Daleks look clean from then on. I mean, they did look cool and the same from Series 1 onwards, but they were kind of weathered and looked like they just came out of battle, which was kind of the idea, I guess. I mean, they did just survive the Time War. But I like how these new Time Warp Daleks are really clean, like they were newly built Daleks. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing the Daleks this year. And I'm actually hoping that they give them more spotlight and that they get to kill more people, because, let's be honest, they haven't really killed anybody on screen since Victory of the Daleks. So yeah, make your argument that the Daleks have been overused and say that they deserve a break, and I can see your point. But I'm honestly looking forward to seeing the Daleks this year. And I'm not just saying this as a Dalek fan, but I'm saying this as a Doctor Who fan in general. Yeah, you've all guessed I'm a Dalek fan due to the title of my channel. And there's also the fact that I have a collection of Daleks, and the fact that a Dalek is the main character in Second Cut. And I also got to meet the voice of the Daleks, Nicholas Briggs, twice. Yeah, as if once wasn't good enough, I got to see him twice. That's freaking awesome for a Doctor Who and Dalek fan. So yeah, I look forward to seeing how the Daleks return in this year. And if it is a two-parter like they say it is, then I look forward to seeing the first two-parter Dalek story since Journey's End.
I'm Dalek44. And Fezzes are cool. And Daleks. Daleks are cool. Hello fans, Rik here, the People's Poet, here to put out a message to all you fascist bully boys out there. Which is, stop being fascist bully boys and, I hate Neil. Yes, I hate Neil, and Vivian's a complete and utter bastard. Yeah, that's right. But Mike's a pretty cool guy, yeah. Nothing bad to say about Mike. Nice, short guy, wears cool specs a lot, you know, yeah, and all that jazz, and, you know what, I can't think of anything else to say, so I'm just going to do it as myself.
Yes, as most of you will know, Rik Mayall died at the age of 56 on the 9th of June this year in his home in Barnes in London. For a while the cause of death was unknown, but his widow stated that he was suffering from some sort of event after a run that morning. But many Rik Mayall fans, as well as comedy actors, have paid a tribute to him since he was one of the comedy greats, and he influenced a lot of people, including David Walliams.
So I thought I'd review one of his most popular shows to commemorate the memory of Rik Mayall. And what better show to review than the Young Ones?
Once in every lifetime comes a love like this. Oh, I need you, you need me. Oh, my darling, can't you see? Young ones, darling, we're the young ones. The young ones shouldn't be afraid to live, love. There's a song to be sung, 'cause we may not be the young ones very long.
The Young Ones is a British sitcom which was broadcast in the United Kingdom from 1982 to 1984 in 2 6-part series. The show was shown on BBC Two, and it featured anarchic and offbeat humour which became very popular in the 1980s. And it made household names of its writers and performers. The show was about 4 undergraduate students sharing a house together. Violent punk Vivian, played by Adrian Edmondson, pompous would-be anarchist Rik, played by the late Rik Mayall, long-suffering paranoid hippie Neil, played by Nigel Planer, and the diminutive and shady Mike, played by Christopher Ryan. It also featured that British comedian who is in every single episode of the show, but we never take the time to figure out what his...
Oh fuck it, his name's Alexei Sayer.
Who played various members of the Bolosky family. Most often Jerzy Bolosky, who was the landlord of the building, and occasionally independent characters, such as the train driver in Bambi and Harry the Bastard in Nasty. The show combined traditional sitcom style with violent slapstick, jokes that had nothing to do with the plot, and surrealism. These older styles were mixed in with the working and lower middle class attitudes of the growing 1980s alternative comedy boom. Every episode except for one featured a live performance by a band, including Madness, Motorhead and The Damned. Every single episode of the show would just be about the 4 students going about their daily lives, living together, and sometimes hating each other at the same time. The characters included Mike the Cool Person, played by Christopher Ryan, who was the assumed leader of the group and does not involve himself in the battles between the other 3. He makes puns which are either deliberately cheap or humorous but over-celebrated.
I'm not going to the laundry, I'm going to the cellar. I've got a stiff. Know what I mean? He gets worse by the minute.
Most times you see Mike, he'll wear a pair of cool shades that make him look like a police officer without the uniform. He considers himself a ladies' man and brags about his power over women. Every time the gang do something stupid or outrageously crazy, Mike always likes to take charge of it. Whenever the lads get into a situation that they think they can't get out of, Mike always steps in to take charge of it and take care of everything.
This is a very tricky spot, but Mike, the cool person, will squeeze it.
Rik, played by the recently deceased Rik Mayall, is a self-proclaimed anarchist who is studying sociology and/or domestic sciences. He writes poetry and proclaims himself as the poet's people, believing himself to be the spokesperson for a generation.
This was actually the second time I ever saw Rik on screen. The first time I saw him was when he played Flashheart in the Blackadder series. And I had no idea that they were both the same person. I mean, who'd have thought that a guy who says,
"Well, that's how I like my girls. Direct and to my point." Tally ho then, back to the bar.
In Blackadder was the same guy who does
Stop shouting, Neo! Stop shouting yourself! I am not shouting! Yes, you are! I'm bloody well handled!
in The Young Ones.
Now we all know that Rik passed away recently this year, but every show he's in, including this one, you could tell that he's just putting all his energy into his performances, giving us good over-the-top humour. He often gets into fights with Vivian over stuff that they believe in or don't believe in, or the fact that they just don't like each other at all. He's a vegetarian who wishes all men will love each other as brothers, except for Neil, who he hates, repeatedly calling him a bloody hippie. Nevertheless, nearly everything he does is hypocritical and self-serving. Vivian, often known as Viv Bastard, played by Adrian Edmondson, is a psychopathic punk medical student. He has spiked orange-dyed hair and 4 metal stars seemingly embedded on his forehead. He wears big boots, a sleeveless vest, and quite a few piercings. Vivian is very violent and uses his fists on Rik and Neil, but it's been proven that he despises Rik more than he does Neil. For example, when Rik, Mike and Neil meet his mother at a bar in the episode Boring, he calls both Neil and Mike his friends, but he prefers Rik as a complete bastard, I know. And one of my favourite moments with her is when she visits them in the episode Sick, because of this scene.
Hello, Vivian.
Piss off!
That's no way to talk to your mother, Vivian.
All right then, piss off, Mum!
That's better.
I freaking love that line. Let me hear it again.
All right then, piss off, Mum!
And here's another piece of interesting trivia for you. For those of you who don't know, the actress who played Vivian's mother in The Young Ones was also the same actress who played Mrs. Scratchard in Blackadder's Christmas Carol. Bet you didn't see that coming, huh? Unless you already knew that, but if you did, then you probably did see that coming. We all know that Rik and Aid were partners in comedy during the time. And whatever comedy they were both in, you could tell that they were both giving it their all. Rik doing his over-the-top insanity humour, and Adrian doing his over-the-top insanity performances as well, but with a shouty type of voice.
And that's why I'm doing this review, to commemorate his memory of his great comedy.
Neil the Hippie, played by Nigel Planer, is a clinically depressed, pacifist, vegetarian environmentalist working towards a peace studies degree. He is victimised by the other housemates and is forced to do all the housework, shopping, cleaning and cooking. He is never acknowledged for it unless it goes wrong. Normally provides tea to drink and cornflakes or lentils for his housemates to eat. Neil believes that everyone and everything hates him. In some episodes of the show, we often see Neil attempting to kill himself, by either hanging or digging a grave for himself.
Okay lads, right, this is it, okay, I'm going now. This is the final moment, okay?
There was even one episode called Flood where he repeatedly hits himself in the face with a frying pan. And even though he does it around his so-called friends a couple of times, no one takes interest in why he's doing it, because they're more concerned about where their breakfasts are. And throughout the two series, Alexei routinely appears as many characters, most of them being members of the Bolosky family, including Jerzy Bolosky and his brother Billy Bolosky, but in many other episodes he appears as other types of characters, like the ones I mentioned earlier. Jerzy is apparently Russian, however, several times during the series he would break character, or in one case the fourth wall, and declared directly to the camera,
I'm not really foreign, you know. I just do it to appear more sophisticated.
And all his other characters break the fourth wall too. Like Harry the Bastard breaks the fourth wall when he's dressed as a vampire, saying how he thinks that everyone thinks that he's sold out since he started doing telly, since he's a comedian.
So yeah, Alexei was in every single episode of the show. And every one of his characters would always break the fourth wall in the middle of the story. So it's great that a great comedian like Alexei would come up with his own material to add to the show.
I've not always been mad, you know, but I was actually driven mad by the indifference of architects and council planners. You see, I live in a tower block, and the thing about those is there's a terrible noise problem, because there's no noise insulation at all, you know, and 8 floors below you, there's always some bastard who's got a Yamaha home organ, you know. You're just about to go to sleep and you hear this.
The show always took place in London, but even though it was meant to be set in London, various scenes were filmed around Bristol. Yeah, it was a surprise to me too that even though the show was set in North London, many scenes were filmed at Bristol. One of the most recognisable sets being Bristol Temple Mead Station. And I find that very interesting because I live in Bristol. Who'd have guessed that they'd have filmed it in my hometown, eh? The show has become really popular in the 80s and still gains a popularity today, with various DVD releases and TV repeats occasionally.
Now I never really heard about The Young Ones until I found out about it on YouTube, so I decided to take a look at the show for real, and I liked it, and I still love it today. I honestly think it's one of the best 80s British comedies I've ever seen.
And I reviewed this show in dedication to Rik Mayall, who recently passed away, because in my opinion he was a great comedy writer and actor. Whatever show he was in, he would always give it his all and do whatever he wanted to do. So I would like to thank you, Rik, for bringing us this comedy gold. It will never be forgotten, and you will never be forgotten. And you may remember quite some time ago that I listed this show as the top 15 comedic influences from my childhood, because of its over-the-top humour and the fact that they broke the fourth wall in pretty much every single episode. Writers Ben Elton and Rik Mayall pretty much did whatever they wanted. They wrote what jokes they wanted to write in. Even if their jokes had nothing to do with the story, they just did what they thought was funny and didn't worry about what other people were going to say. They're two writers who would take chances, no matter what the consequences were. They just did whatever they wanted to do and didn't care about what other people were going to say about it. And as I said before, some of the best comedy comes from that. Do what you want to do and don't worry what other people are going to say about it. In fact, Ben Elton made a couple of appearances in the show as various characters who were wild and over the top. It's funny how a writer would like to put himself on screen as well as writing. So if you want to watch a comedy show that has brilliant over-the-top 80s humour, then I definitely check this out. You'll get a lot of laughs out of it. And if you ever loved Rik, then you'll definitely enjoy this show. It was one of the great British comedies. I'm Dalek44, and I do this for you, Rik. You were a great comedian, and you'll always be remembered. I remember watching this film on VHS. For those of you who have seen my video about why I think The Magic Roundabout should be released on DVD, I'll go through the history of it real quick. The Magic Roundabout was created in French by Serge Danot, then adapted and narrated in English by Eric Thompson, who gave each character a charm that was adored by millions, making it one of the most cherished British television institutions of all time. So it makes sense that in the 70s they would make the movie Dougal and the Blue Cat, which of course led Eric Thompson to rewrite it for the English version. So what's the story? One day in the Magic Garden, Dougal goes to visit Zebedee and tells him about some funny noises he heard at a treacle factory the other night before. As Dougal goes to see Florence about it, a new arrival comes into the garden in the form of a blue cat named Buxton.
Buxton? Buxton? Aye, that's the name, lad. Buxton.
Which spells trouble for the gang. Dougal suspects things are afoot when he notices Buxton talking to a mysterious blue voice, memorably voiced by Fenella Fielding. Some very strange things begin to happen in the garden, and everybody is captured except for Dougal.
Curses and black pudding! They haven't got that dog!
So it's up to him to save the day from Buxton and Madame Blue. So that's the story of the film in a nutshell. So what do I think of it? I mean, like, what can I say about this movie that loads of people like Mark Kermode haven't said already? Every Magic Roundabout fan has seen it, and every Magic Roundabout fan loves it. In fact, they more than love it. They go bananas for it. So I'm thinking why people actually do go bananas for this movie. And don't get me wrong, I go bananas for this movie too. I'm in love with it. But every Magic Roundabout fan in the world seems to like it. I think some people even like it more than they like the CGI movie from 2005. My guess is that it's to do with Eric Thompson's writing, since he was the narrator and writer in the original show, so it would make sense that he would come back for the movie. Here's a little bit of trivia for you. This is the first ever Magic Roundabout project to have more than one actor in it. That's right, Eric Thompson was joined by the great Fenella Fielding, who voices the blue voice in the movie. And her performance is really memorable because it's such a sinister voice, especially with her famous catchphrase.
Blue is beautiful. Blue is best. I'm blue. I'm beautiful. I'm best.
Whew, I wouldn't want that woman in my house. Like I said, this was the first time we had more than one actor in the Magic Roundabout. This would be upstaged later with the 2005 movie, but for the time, this was pretty awesome. And there's not really much to say about the characters, since everybody knows them and everybody loves them, and of course I talked about it in the previous video where I talk about why the show should get a DVD release. But the stuff that I can say about this movie are the new characters, such as Buxton. Buxton is a wicked and evil blue cat who wants to become the blue king of the world and turn everything blue alongside his master, the Blue Voice.
Oh, I'm so evil.
The Blue Voice's true appearance was never really seen in this movie. This is like how we saw Dr. Claw's arms but never his face. But in this film we never see Madame Blue at all. Yeah, Madame Blue was the other name of the Blue Voice, but yeah, she's got both names. It's the Blue Voice or Madame Blue, whichever one you want to call her. And like I said, Fernanda Fielding is very chilling as this character. I mean, you could imagine her voicing any villain you want. Heck, she could have even been the new voice for Cruella de Vil if she wanted to. And it's kind of ironic that blue is the colour of our main villains, and it's funny because my favourite colour is blue. But it's never my favourite colour to the point where I'd want it to be the only colour in existence. No, that's just psychotic. And this movie was a big step forward from the original TV series, since the original episodes were about 5 minutes long, and it was always one particular thing going on in the episode. But in this film, you got lots more to go through. So you got a lot more time to go through the characters that we know and love, to introduce the new characters, and to go through a big story that puts everybody in peril and puts Dougal on the line where he has to save the day. And it even shows us Dougal doing the one thing that we never expected to see him do. The task of resisting a room full of 14 tons of sugar.
To eat or not to eat? That is the question. Well, it is nobler in the stomach to suffer. Oh, shut up, Dougal.
Yeah, I found that really heartbreaking when I was a kid. I mean, it's Dougal trying to resist the one thing that he adores, because he knows that if he eats one lump of sugar, Buxton will know that he's Dougal instead of Blue Peter the Blue Dog. And I thought that was a clever idea too, for Dougal to disguise himself as a blue dog. I mean, that was the only way he could go into the factory to save his friends, because you had to be blue to get in. The film has a clever mix of the comedy that Eric Thompson brought to the original show, and it also has a bit of a darkness to it too. And by darkness I mean putting the characters that we know and love in great perils, like everyone getting captured and chained up and Dougal being forced to be put in a room full of sugar to prove that he is Blue Peter or Dougal. Yeah, this was pretty dark compared to the TV series, because it's the first time we saw the characters that we know and love in this kind of position. And I thought that was a good move for Eric Thompson. And Serge Danot. Eric Thompson also writes the songs for this film, and each one of them are memorable, from Florence's A Lovely Morning, to Dylan's Lullaby, to I Am King, to Florence's Sad Song, and to We Are Blue. And I have two favourite songs from this movie, one of them being I Am Kim, because even though it's a villain song, it's a very light-hearted villain song. Well, not exactly light-hearted. I mean, Buxton does talk about killing people and all that stuff if they defy him. But the music sounds really upbeat that you wouldn't have thought it was a villain song. I also love the song We Are Blue, because even though Dougal's singing alongside Buxton, we all know that Dougal's about to betray him at any minute. But it's just nice to see this fake friendship that the two have gone through. Buxton thinking that Dougal's a blue dog named Blue Peter. Not that Blue Peter. Even though it was a fake friendship, it was really nice to see Dougal and Buxton getting along before the truth was revealed, and it goes through the big climax at the end. And speaking of climax, how many of you remember the scene where Buxton and Dougal go to the moon in this film? That's right, for those of you who haven't been paying attention, Dougal and Buxton go to the moon in this film.
Oh, what a place. Worse than Barnsley. It's lack of water that does it.
Film critic Mark Kermode, who was responsible for bringing this movie on DVD, describes it as the inspiration for Wallace and Gromit: A Grand Day Out. And I can see why he would make that comparison, since the two go to the moon and Dougal's a dog and Gromit's a dog, so yeah, it would make sense that he would do that comparison. The first time I ever saw this movie was on VHS, and I loved it back then as much as the show. And watching it again today, I still love it. When I first got this movie on a video cassette, I could not stop watching it. In fact, the only time I did stop watching it was when I got rid of my old VHS player and converted to a DVD player. I'm still kind of upset that I had to give away the video. I mean, I gave it to a charity shop, so it is going to a good cause.
This is your captain speaking. In 4 days, we will be landing at Watford Junction. Or Madrid. Or Berlin. Or Peking. Or Bournemouth. Did you like that? Oh, I'm so talented.
But when I found out that the movie was being released on DVD, I instantly saw the opportunity and put it on my Christmas list. Watching it on DVD, I still love the movie. I mean, the restored quality is just brilliant. It looks like anything that you would want to see today. A clean screen and all that jazz. If you're a fan of the Magic Roundabout, then you're definitely going to love this film. I'd recommend it for any Magic Roundabout fan out there. I would honestly recommend this movie for any Magic Roundabout fan or fans of animation in general. You won't be disappointed with the comedy that Eric Thompson provided for it. So go out there and watch it and enjoy it. You'll thank me for it later. Hopefully. I'm Dalek44. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a movie to watch. Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I've got one anyway. Let's talk about Postman Pat. It was a British stop-motion animated children's television series first produced by Woodland Animations, owned by Ivor Wood. It was aimed at preschool children and concerns the adventures of Pat Clifton, a postman in a fictional village of Greendale. It was written by John Cunliffe, the man who brought us Rosie and Jim, and directed by animator Ivor Wood, who worked on The Magic Roundabout, Paddington Bear and The Herd. This wasn't anything action-packed or adventurous like a lot of TV shows I used to watch, but it was very decent. It had a nice friendly postman who always got the job done come rain, shine or snow, and a bunch of villagers who were very friendly and we got to know more about them as the episodes went on. And of course it had that catchy as hell theme song.
Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white hat.
Making a movie based off of this TV show would be a tricky challenge, but it wouldn't be impossible. Some great care would have to be taken. I know, let's get that guy from Greenway. And while we're at it, why don't we get that Scottish actor who played Doctor Who? No, not him. There you go. And let's also get that ginger carrot from the Harry Potter films. And while we're at it, why don't we get one of the greatest companies of all time? Classic Media. Now you'd think that a company like that would stay true to the original Postman Pat and what made it so great. And what did we get? Postman Pat The Movie. This computer-animated comedy film featuring Postman Pat has quite a history to it. It was originally meant to be released on the 24th of May 2013, but was pushed back to 23rd of May 2014. It was also the first animated project from Icon Productions, the team that brought Thomas and the Magic Railroad to VHS and DVD. And I'm guessing you all want to know what I think of this movie. Well, I'll get to that when I tell you the story. In the village of Greendale in the north of England, Postman Pat, voiced by Stephen Mangan, goes around the village delivering the post like he always does. With the bonus he was supposed to get from his employer, the Special Delivery Service, he plans to take his wife Sarah on her late honeymoon to Italy. But their new boss, Edwin Carbuncle, has cancelled all bonuses because he plans to make the Special Delivery Service more effective, thinking that being friendly is a waste of time and a waste of money. Another asshole who just wants more money. When Pat gets home to try and tell Sarah about the fact that the honeymoon is cancelled because of their new boss, his son Julian shows Pat the TV show You're the One, hosted by Simon Cowbell. Take a guess at which colossal prick he's based off of. No, really, come on, take a wild guess. The next auditions for the show come to Greendale, and Cowbell confirms that the person who wins the contest will be awarded a holiday to Italy and a record contract. Pat decides to take part in the contest, and his unexpected singing voice, played by Ronan Keating, wins the contest.
I'm Simon Cowbell, and you know how to deliver.
Pat is to sing again in the finals in London against Josh, voiced by Rupert Grint. But his manager, Will, voiced by David Tennant, is very keen to make sure that his client wins at all costs. He even resorts to cartoonish antics to make sure that Pat doesn't win the competition, or even makes it for that matter.
I'm going to stamp out that postman.
The Chief Executive Officer of the Special Delivery Service, Mr. Brown, voiced by Jim Broadbent, and Edwin Carbuncle have been watching the contest on the telly, so they plan to make a publicity campaign around Postman Pat.
We've even got a telly programme. I'm just an ordinary postman.
Which is a clever reference to the TV series. Carbuncle also makes a robot replica of Pat called the Patbot 3000 to take over his postal duties while he's away.
The most important thing for a postman is speed, efficiency, ruling the world. Well, I was going to say being friendly.
Along with another robot replica of Jess called the Jessbot as well. After Pat is gone, the Patbot delivers the rounds like Pat normally does, but it behaves very oddly as soon as it starts malfunctioning, and the people of Greendale are starting to complain about Pat behaving in such a way. Meanwhile, the manager of the Special Delivery Service is fired by Carbuncle and is convinced that Pat doesn't want him anymore, not realising that Pat is a robot. How can anyone not realise that Pat is a robot? Meanwhile, while Wilf is trying to make schemes to stop Pat, he doesn't realise that the Pat going around Greendale is actually a robot. He uses the kind of traps that Wile E. Coyote would use to catch the Roadrunner, and somehow doesn't get the slightest bit injured, like a black eye or his arm in a sling every time his plans backfire. While Pat is getting a lot of attention from the public for his sinning and all the publicity he's getting, Carbuncle plans to replace every single delivery man in England with the Patbot 3000. And the rest of the film is just Pat having to make the choice of either winning the final performance or giving it all up to save Greendale from the robots. So that's the story. So what's my opinions of the movie? Well, it's decent. Hear me out. This movie has gotten a lot of mixed reactions from critics around the world ever since it was first released. Some said it was a scary and confusing adaptation to the original show, and others enjoyed the jokes that they had in it. And you may remember my reaction to the trailer of this film. But after watching the film in the cinema, it actually turned out to be better than the trailers made it out to be. And hell, I enjoyed a lot of the jokes in the film. Like that post-Dalek makes me laugh every time I see it appear. And there's not really much point in talking about the characters that we already know from the show, since everybody knows them and everybody loves them. And I've already mentioned that Stephen Mangan from Green Wing voices Postman Pat as well as the Patbot 3000, while Ronan Keating does Pat's singing voice. Here's another interesting fact about the film. When the movie was first announced, it was said that Gary Barlow was meant to be Pat's singing voice. But they lied to us! And gave us the lead singer from Boyzone instead. And don't get me wrong, I do like Ronan's singing voice, but I don't really get why they didn't let Stephen Mangan do his own singing. I mean, if they let Rupert Grint do his own singing, then why not Stephen Mangan? But never mind, I guess it doesn't really matter that much. Even though there's not too much point in talking about the characters that we know and love from the show, I will say this. Pat and Jess's relationship in the movie is kind of like Wallace and Gromit's relationship. Like, they both come up with a team effort to deliver the post in one way or another, and they even somehow manage to communicate with each other.
I have not put on weight.
Maybe they've known each other for so long now that they can somewhat understand what they're trying to say. Now let's talk about the new characters for the film. There's Josh, a boy band star voiced by Rupert Grint from the Harry Potter films. Josh was one of the two finalists in You're the One, the other being Pat, of course. Josh is obsessed with video games, and this plays a part in the climax of the movie, which I won't really give away. He's calm, cool and collected, and takes a liking to Jess.
Your cat's amazing.
And unlike Wilf, he's not very competitive and is always happy to let the best man win. If that's not being a good sport, I don't know what the hell is. There's Wilf, voiced by David Tennant. Josh's manager in You're the One and puts a lot of effort into making sure that he wins the London finals. So when Postman Pat from Greendale suddenly comes into the picture, blows everyone away with his wonderful singing voice and starts to become favoured to win, Wilf realises that he must do whatever it takes to eliminate the competition. So he goes to various cartoon antics that the Coyote would use to catch the Roadrunner just to eliminate Pat from the competition. The trailers made it look like that Wilf was going to be the villain, but it turns out it was just Edwin Carbuncle who was the real villain and Wilf was just more of a side villain. But I really do enjoy this character. He's very hilarious. I mean, David Tennant puts a lot of effort into the performance and he's extremely cartoonish and over the top as the character. And that's why I love Wilf so much. And I'm not just saying it because David Tennant plays him, he really is a very funny character. And as I said, he's very cartoonish and over the top, but he's still freaking hilarious to watch.
Seriously, I love how over the top and cartoonish David Tennant's character is. From watching the trailers, I always thought that he was going to be the main villain of the film, but no, it turned out to be some asshole who just wants more money. But Tennant's still damn funny.
You should have stuck to Lighthouse, man.
Mr. Brown, voiced by Jim Broadbent, is the CEO of the Special Delivery Service who works alongside Edwin Carbuncle. He's like a kind father figure towards Pat in all situations, but he rejected all of Edwin Carbuncle's ideas of having robots displace all postmen because of all the bad tests that the robots had recently with scaring an old woman. Mr. Brown was unaware of Carbuncle's devious plot to take over the Special Delivery Service with robots until the end of the film. And as I said before, I won't really give it away for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. I kind of see Mr. Brown as another Jim Broadbent character. You know, cheerful and all that stuff that you see in other Jim Broadbent characters. Well, except for the guy in Hot Fuzz. Then there's Edwin Carbuncle, the villain of the film. He's a devious schemer who plans to take over the Special Delivery Service and replace every delivery man with robots. His early prototypes of robots didn't go down well because they looked very scary and dangerous from the first glance. However, when Pat starts to become really popular and famous in the TV show You're the One, Carbuncle saw it as a chance to put his plan into action. He redesigned one of his early prototype models to look like Pat. And to Pat and Mr. Brown, it just seemed like that he was just using the robot as a temporary operative for Pat while he was away. But it all turned out to be a diabolical plot to take over the Special Delivery Service and replace every postman with a robot.
Now that everyone loves Postman Pat, I replace every delivery man with the Patbot 3000.
And as I said, he is just another one of those assholes who just wants more money. But this is a completely different way for him to want more money, by replacing everyone with machines, thinking that machines are the way of the future and they're more efficient than humans. So this movie kind of shows how technology could go too far, as it did in this film. And now we come to the all-important Patbot 3000. And I gotta say, these things look freaking terrifying when they're smiling. A number of critics like Mark Kermode have criticised how scary these things can look in front of young kids, especially sensitive ones. And I can see why. I mean, those grins do look pretty terrifying. They almost remind me of the Joker from Batman.
Heck, I always wanted to just give him some Joker makeup just to complete the image.
And I doubt this is what every kid who loves Postman Pat wants to see. I highly doubt that they'd want to see their favourite postman be turned into a scary looking robot, especially ones that malfunction.
The Postman Pat movie kind of has a Doctor Who quality to it, and I'm not just saying that because David Tennant's in it, but the Patbots are kind of like a Doctor Who robot army. Like they walk around like the kind of like how a Cyberman would walk in the new series, and they're kind of a mix between a Doctor Who robot army and the Joker from Batman because of their wicked grins, which would seem pretty scary for young kids.
But here's my question. How the hell can people not tell that these robots are fake Pats? I mean, even I could tell that it was a fake. I mean, even though Pat was told that it was a robot, it looked completely different from the real thing. So if Pat knew that it was a robot, then how come everybody else couldn't tell it was a robot? I mean, the people of Greendale are not that stupid.
So yeah, this movie isn't exactly as good as the original Postman Pat TV series, but at least it's better than Special Delivery Service.
As I said, it's not exactly as good as the original 80s TV series, but it's nowhere near terrible. The animation is decent, the story is well written, and it kept me on my seat long enough to want to know what was going to happen to the characters. As I said, my reaction to the trailer was, well. But the film actually turned out to be better than the trailers were making it out to be. Watching it in the cinema, I could tell that the creators were at least trying to make a movie based off of the original TV series, even if it didn't completely work out that well. But the jokes made me laugh, and I actually did want to know what was going to happen to the characters next in the film. So this film kept me engaged long enough to see what was going to happen at the end. So I pretty much enjoyed it. It was a decent film. Plus, for a kids film based off of a popular kids icon that's been around for years, it did put some actual effort into it. Unlike some other pieces of shit that I know. I mean, it doesn't exactly beat the Lego Movie or any of the other films I've seen this year, but it's nowhere near terrible. It's a pretty decent flick.
It's kind of like Thomas and the Magic Railroad in my opinion. Well, it's not exactly as good as the original, but it could have been a hell of a lot worse, considering how many films based on TV shows have had bad reputations recently. So overall, I give them credit for at least trying. I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks. God, the songs in that film are so damn catchy. Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. As a guy who grew up in the 90s, my generation had a lot of things that we craved and got, such as reruns of old cartoons that came before our time, trains, computer programs having lives of their own, The Simpsons, American teenagers kicking Japanese monsters' asses, cartoons made by writers who are flipped and have no scripts, Lego, Disney films, toys having lives of their own, penguins, and a bunch of other things we don't need to mention. But there was one other thing that my generation absolutely loved, and that was robots.
That's right, robots was one of the big things in the 90s as well. So we got lots of robots from other media such as the Star Wars movies.
So in the early 2000s, the BBC gave us Little Robots.
It's a robot. It's a robot. It's a robot. It's a robot. It's a robot.
Little Robots is a stop-motion animated children's TV series produced by Cosgrove Hall Films, the same team that brought us Danger Mouse, Count Duckula and The Wind in the Willows. And it was broadcast on CBeebies, the BBC's children's channel, of course. The show was based on a series of books by Mike Brownlow in 1999. It was distributed by BBC worldwide to over 60 countries.
As I said, this isn't the first time we ever saw robots on the TV screen. We've seen them in loads of other things like Star Wars and a bunch of others we don't need to mention.
And the show has a whole variety of literally colourful characters. There's the central character in the show, Tiny. He's turquoise, has a pink antenna on the top of his head, and a pink button on his belly which opens the lid on his head, uncovering a couple of tools which he uses to fix machines and robots. He is also responsible for putting the day-night lever at the right times in the little robot world. Tiny lives in the nut and bolt tree, which is right next to the day-night lever, which is pretty handy considering that he has to pull it every day and night.
So you could say that Tiny is pretty much the god of the robot world. I mean, he controls the moon, he controls the sun, he fixes robots, he fixes things that robots made, and a bunch of other stuff. So he's basically a god in this world.
He also has a positive view on things and always tries to help his friends to live in peace and harmony together. And even when someone does something stupid, he's never really one to lose his temper.
Oh, no! What's the matter? Spotty's only gone and broken the day-night lever, that's what. Oh, Tiny, it's all my fault. I'm sure I can fix it, but I'll probably need a new lever.
Because they're his friends, he's always willing to forgive and forget. And why?
Because that's what friends do! They forgive each other!
There's the robot dog Messy, who loves things dirty and messy, which kinda hints the name. Scary often teaches him tricks and makes shows with him, where he's known as Messy the Wonder Hound. His vocal effects were provided by Frank Welker, who you may know as Dr. Claw, Frederick Jones and Scooby-Doo and a bunch of other characters. There's the eldest of all the little robots, Sporty, the strongest and the fittest. He's constantly running, playing games and sports, and never gets tired of making himself stronger and fitter. Sporty has his own private gym with a trampoline and a conveyor belt. So I guess you could say that Sporty's a jogging fool. There's Stretchy, a very organised and efficient little robot, who's in charge of sorting the junk that comes from the chute in the junkyard. Though his main worry is to keep the junkyard organised so his friends can use it. His obsession for organisation sometimes causes problems. On one occasion, he accidentally tied a knot in his neck due to overwork. He lives in the junkyard inside an abandoned radiator, and his junkyard's always the best place to go when a little robot needs a bit of junk. So you could say that whatever you need, Stretchy's the robot to go to.
Well, I've just tidied up a couple of boxes of bendy fettling pyrites and shimmer shavings. They're over there in that corner.
Bendy fettling right tires?
Bendy fettling pyrites and shimmer shavings.
Thanks, Stretchy.
Stretchy was voiced by Jimmy Hibbert, who's been in a lot of Cosgrove Hall projects before this one.
If you don't know who he is, Jimmy Hibbert has been in pretty much everything that Cosgrove Hall's ever made.
Such examples would be when he played Isambard Barebone Toad in A Tale of Two Toads, and Dr. Von Goosewink and other various characters in Count Duckula.
So if you don't know who the actor is, then you most probably have heard his voice in various kids shows before this, and even after.
Rusty is a feminine and sensitive little robot who wears a pink dress and has very rusty metal, and wears a funnel on the top of her head. She lives in an old rusty bucket and constantly has new ideas on how to improve and decorate it. She's very impulsive and accidentally prone. And tense situations or anything that causes her to get overexcited can make her overheat and release puffs of steam from her funnel. She also has a notably childish crush on Sporty. Though I guess it would make sense, I mean he is the strongest of the robots. And she gets pretty nervous at times.
What's the matter, Rusty? You look worried.
I am worried.
See the nervous wreck?
There's Stripey, a big little robot made with coloured stripes of metal. He's practically the complete opposite of Sporty, moves and talks slowly, but he's a deep and introspective thinker, also a specialist in flowers and storytelling. His best friend is a teddy named Teddy, his metal teddy bear, so you could say that Stripey is like the robot version of Mr. Bean, if he talked more than he did physical performance. And his favourite activities are taking care of his garden, telling stories to his friends, and playing games that require little agility and lots of skill.
I may not be fast, but I am good.
Noisy is a pink little robot who speaks very loudly. She has a trumpet for a nose, plays instruments, writes and sings songs, and loves whatever kind of noise she can produce. Her house is an old drum with a xylophone-themed entryway. Her passion for loud music and noise can often be bothersome for her friends, but she's also a great entertainer. Her laughter is unforgettable too. Spotty is a round yellow little robot covered in coloured spots. She wears spectacles and can retract all her limbs and roll around like a ball for fast locomotion. She has a strong personality, likes rules and orders, and tends to give orders to her friends, often causing conflicts with her friends.
Why don't we just play run and fun with the others?
Rule number 8, no playing with little robots who aren't in the club.
Spotty, don't you see? It's not fun having all these rules.
Well, I love it.
But no one else does.
Wow, she's just as bad as Mr. Fussy.
So I guess you could say that Spotty's a little bit of a stick in the mud when it comes to rules. She's almost like Di Station from Ivor The Engine, being a stickler for orders and regulations. Oh, and by the way, here's an interesting piece of trivia for all you Vicar of Diblick fans out there. That was Alice Tinker voicing Spotty the whole time.
I dreamt I built this giant sculpture, a work of art.
You know, I can't believe it's not that.
Scary is a purple little robot with a black cape. He's a great actor with a Donald Snyder-esque voice. He likes to scare his friends, though he's often not successful, and stage shows to entertain his friends. He has his own stage, which is also his house.
I have very high standards, you know.
And as I said, he likes to scare his friends, and sometimes he's successful, and sometimes he's not so successful.
Hello, Scary!
Oh, bravo, bravissimo.
Okay, now you're acting, and not very well.
Well, at least I didn't get an acting degree out of a cereal box, mate. Are you trying to scare me?
Well, I thought I was scary.
Scary can't help making things fun for people, can he? Just like you, Tiny.
And then of course there's the Sparky twins.
We're the same! We wear the same! We walk the same! We look the same! We talk the same! We are the Sparky twins!
Oh, how do I describe the Sparky twins? Imagine Norman Price and Bill and Ben the Tank Engine twins rolled into one if they were two girlish robots. Then you'd have pretty much as hilarious characters as you can think of.
Okay, Sparky 2, watch this! Pretty good, Sparky 1, but I didn't know you were allowed to have help.
They're a greenish-blue little robot couple with different coloured bellies. The twins are almost identical, full of energy, love dancing and doing practical jokes on the other robots.
There, all neat and good. What, hey? Who did that?
Morning, Stretchy!
Oh, you Sparky twins, always up to something.
Sparky 1 has a pink spot on her belly and Sparky 2 has a yellow spot on her belly. They're able to communicate with each other over long distances by exchanging electrical rays through the antennas on their heads, and their catchphrase is when they high-five. The Sparky twins are my favourite characters in the entire show, because they're the most funny, they have the best lines, they have sparkling personalities, no pun intended, and they're not bad for the hell of it, they just want to have fun. So you could basically say that they're fun-loving rascals.
You just love doing this kind of thing, don't you? I suppose we just do, Tiny. It's what we're best at, really. Larking about, flashing lights, practical jokes, you know.
They live in a pair of speakers by an old record table. And what also makes them so great is that they know when they've taken the joke too far and know when to apologise to their friends.
We didn't mean any harm. We were just having fun and we're very sorry. We'll make it up to you. Won't we, Sparky 1?
And there's something else I noticed about the Sparkies. In most episodes you see them, they seem to hang out with Tiny a lot. It's almost like Tiny's their favourite little robot friend.
Hey! Sparky! Sparky! It's me, Tiny! 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 Hello! Hello! Tiny! Sparky 1!
In fact, I sometimes think that Sparky 2 might have a bit of a crush on Tiny.
Give me 3, Tiny! Hey!
The Sparkies are also like typical siblings. I mean, they have fun together, they play tricks on robots together, and they dance together too. Fabulously, I might add. But like all other siblings, they have their arguments and their fallings out in certain episodes. But in the end, they're still sisters, and they always make up for it in the end.
Sparky 2! Oh, Sparky 1! Oh, I've been so worried. You've been worried? How do you think I felt?
And I find it a little bit odd how these two never got that many episodes to themselves. They're fucking hilarious. And I know what you're going to say, yeah, there's a lot of characters here and we need to focus on a lot of them. But if I'm completely honest, when the Sparky twins are around, it just makes the episodes more entertaining. I mean, come on, it's always hilarious to have at least 1 or 2 troublemakers in a kids' show.
That's what it's called when you fall over in Botch Botch. Can I have a go? Yeah, of course you can!
The Sparky twins are voiced by Mel Gilroy and Sue Perkins, who are a bit of a comedy duo. In fact, their lines are so good I keep thinking that they improvise half the time.
My turn! Mine? You had last go before we went to bed. Did not. That wasn't a proper go. Was absolutely two with pink knobs on.
Other characters include Flappy the Bat and the Bobo Birds, who are all voiced by Frank Welker, who often play important roles in the show. Well, that's the big list of characters done and dusted. Now let's talk about the animation. It's all stop-motion animation, which was one of the famous animation styles that Cosgrove Hall was famous for at the time. like they've done it with Wind in the Willows and Noddy's Toyland Adventures. And the way they've done it in Little Robots is really impressive. I see it as a sort of upgrade to the animation in Noddy's Toyland Adventures. I mean, yeah, the animation in that was decent, and it made sense for them to use stop motion, considering the fact that the characters were literally toys and a few goblins. But have you ever noticed that in Noddy's Toyland Adventures, the lips don't move whenever they talk? It's sort of like in Fireman Sam and Postman Pat, when the characters' lips would only move to show their facial expressions. But in here, you see their lips actually moving when they talk. So Little Robots animation was an upgrade to Noddy's Toyland Adventures animation. And the settings for the world they're in is really impressive. In fact, half the time it almost looks like they used real metal objects. Like there's a radiator, there's a record player, there's a bunch of other stuff that's made out of metal. I mean, it's so realistic that you could almost mistake it for actual metal items.
Oh, yes! Of course! Brilliant!
This style animation and the lip movements were so brilliant that Cosgrove Hall would eventually use it for their version of Postman Pat. From Postman Pat that they did to Postman Pat Special Delivery Service. But we're here to talk about good shows. As I said, the episodes were broadcast on the CBeebies channel for young kids. The show teaches kids of quite a few things, like friendship, forgiveness, how to have fun, and a bunch of other stuff that a lot of kids shows like this were teaching kids at the time. They've recently started re-showing the show on CBeebies in school days for the young kids to watch in the morning before they go to school. In fact, the show was so popular that a series of LEGO Duplo sets were made based on the show. I mean, they didn't make a lot of Duplo sets, but they were good sets nonetheless. As a kid, I didn't get to see every single episode of Little Robots, but they did end up doing a lot of reruns on the CBeebies channel, and watching it again, it's still a decent show. But if I'm completely honest, Little Robots is not exactly up there with other Cosgrove Hall creations such as Danger Mouse, Count Duckula, or even Wind in the Willows. But it's still worth being one of their best shows they ever made. So if you love robots and stop motion animation, then I'd definitely say check this show out. And show it to your kids if you have any. I'm sure they'll love it. I know I did when I was little. I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks.
Where are you going?
Well, I was planning to go down to the pub for a quick drink of J2O.
Oh, yes! Can we come with you?
Well...
Oh, go on! Please! We'll be ever so good! Won't you, Sparky one? Yeah, of course, Sparky too!
Oh, why not? I'll go get my wallet. Back from my little holiday in Switzerland, and in that time I've only managed to make the mountain train go down the mountain too fast, push a few people off a waterfall, and destroy the statue of Sherlock Holmes. But I know someone who's done a lot worse than I have on their holidays, and his name is Mr. B. also known as Bean the Ultimate Disaster Movie, or Mr. Bean the Movie, was the first full-length feature film to be based off of Mr. Bean. You know, that child in a man's body that everybody loved. Well, this was the first time we ever saw him on the big screen. And it was also the first time I've ever seen Mr. Bean and Rowan Atkinson. So what's the story? The National Gallery of London is asked to send their finest worker to oversee the unveiling of Whistler's mother in California. They send their most inept and distinctive employee in a desperate attempt to get him out of their lives. And that employee is Mr. Bean, the master of disaster. Within days of his arrival, Mr. Bean destroys virtually everything he comes in contact with, be it the career and marriage of his host David Langley or America's greatest painting.
Not necessarily.
And that's really the whole story. This is one of those movies that doesn't need a villain or the free act structure. It's just the life of Mr. Bean while he's in America.
This was the movie that introduced me to Rowan Atkinson. So I guess you could say if it wasn't for Being the Ultimate Disaster Movie, I never would have gotten into Rowan Atkinson's other comedies, such as Blackadder and The Thin Blue Line and a bunch of others we don't need to mention.
You know earlier when I said that this was the first time I saw Rowan Atkinson? Well, that's sort of true and false. It's true because it is the first time I actually saw Rowan Atkinson's face on the big screen as well as TV. And it's also false because The Lion King was the first time I heard his voice, and I didn't even know it was him back then. Wow, what a coincidence.
And let me just say this, Rowan Atkinson just nails it every time I see him on screen. He's best known in Mr. Bean for his physical performances, and this movie shows how good he is at physical performing.
Are you lucky punk?
He gives us some of the jokes that were seen in previous episodes of the show, and he gives us some new jokes that were made specially for this movie, including one of the greatest YouTube poop memes of all time.
Magic.
And all the characters were very memorable in this movie too, like David Langley, his family, that American general, that police officer, the people who worked in the Royal National Gallery of London. I said the characters were memorable, not their names. The first time I saw this movie, I couldn't stop laughing at every moment when Mr. Bean was on screen, whether he was just being himself or causing disasters, like the famous cooking the turkey in the microwave scene. That had me laughing every time I watched that, especially with the outcome of it all. But one of his best moments is when he accidentally ruins the painting of Whistler's mother by putting ink on it and then accidentally putting paint thinner on it. But you could tell by his face and reactions that he was trying to fix the problem, even if it didn't work out really well. And it's especially funny when David finds out that the painting was ruined.
Where's the picture going?
And when Bean shows David what he did to the painting, this brings up one of the funniest overreactions of all time.
Oh, Jesus! Oh, God! Oh, Jesus, God! Oh, Mary, Mother of Jesus of Nazareth! Why am I worrying about this? You did it! All I have to do is go out and tell them what happened. And they say, well, who let them alone with the picture? And I say, me! Then they say, well, you're fired. I say, fired. No. Then they say, firing is not enough. Let's prosecute you for negligence. Then I go to jail. My wife leaves me. My daughter becomes a prostitute. I wind up on death row, sharing a cell with Butch McDick. Calm down. I just gotta calm down. Okay. Give me one more look at the painting.
I freaking love that reaction. Let me hear it again. Just out of nowhere. The next time somebody does something that shocks you, just do it. Just do it out of nowhere. For example, you'll be like, yeah, I don't know how to tell you this, but I accidentally broke your Nintendo Wii U. You did what? Yeah, it's a funny story, a true story. I was playing cricket in the house with Rob, and he threw the ball, and I hit the ball too hard, and it flew into the Nintendo Wii U and smashed it to bits. I got him! Do it if someone kicks you in the nuts, do it if you get sent a bill, whatever. Just do it and see what reactions you'll get out of it.
But what makes Bean a slightly better man in the movie than he was in the show was that he actually does come up with a way to solve the problem of Whistler's mother. And the outcome is both satisfying for him, the fans, and funny at the same time. especially when he gives his speech about what he thinks about the painting.
And even though Mr. Whistler was perfectly aware that his mother was a hideous old bat who looked like she had a cactus lobbed up her backside, he stuck with her and even took the time to paint some amazing picture of her. It's not just a painting, it's a picture of a mad old cow.
And all the other stuff he does in the film is hilarious too. Like that Ride of Doom scene has me on the floor every time I watch it. Especially with this line.
Brace yourself.
Or that moment when the guy flies off the chair. That's fucking hilarious.
I used to watch this movie at least once a week when I was a kid. And watching it again as an adult, I still enjoy it.
I enjoy watching this movie a lot because of Rowan Atkinson, the jokes they have, and the hilarious outcomes in the end. This is one of the greatest movies I've ever seen in the 90s, and as I said, it was what introduced me to Rowan Atkinson in the first place before I knew that he was in The Lion King, which was before this film. And I never really watched any episodes of the show before I watched this film. I ended up watching the show after the film. And you don't really have to watch the show to enjoy the movie. But I think it helps if you watch one or two of the episodes before seeing this film. But whichever order you choose to see him in, then I can guarantee that you're going to enjoy Mr. Bean.
If you just got back from an airplane holiday and want to have a laugh after that exhausting flight, then put that movie on and have a laugh or two. Or 3 or 4, or 5 or 6, or 7 or 8, or 9 or 10, or so on and so forth.
This film is definitely one of the best movies I've ever seen in the 90s, and I always enjoyed going back to it for a laugh or two, or 3 or 4. This is definitely one of the best movies I've ever seen in the 90s, and I always enjoy going back to it.
Seriously, do that reaction and see how other people will react to it. I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks. Right, let's unpack. Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. Has anyone else besides me heard about the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers reboot movie?
Yeah, that was a pretty stupid question to ask, since pretty much every Power Rangers fan has heard of this reboot movie, and a number of Power Ranger fans on YouTube have been talking about it. So, since they're talking about it, and giving their opinions, I thought I'd throw my tenner in.
Get it? Throwing my tenner. And I just threw a tenner. Yeah, get it? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, funny. Yeah. Okay, enough fucking about. Let's get on with the video.
On the 7th of May 2014, Saban and Lionsgate announced that they would be working together to produce a new Power Rangers feature film, which is set to be a reboot of the original Mighty Morphin days. The film is due for release in 2016, and it's set to take place sometime before the Rangers became Rangers. So I'm guessing that means that they're most probably going to focus on when the Rangers became friends before they became Rangers, since they were already friends in the TV series. A lot of Power Ranger fans will be happy to know that this film will be in continuity with the series, and any of the original actors are open for a cameo in the reboot. So since everyone's given out their opinions of this reboot movie, I'm going to give out my opinion. And I think it's a good idea. Yeah, I think that a reboot of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers series as a movie is a very good idea. I mean, think about it, we haven't seen Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on TV for years. I mean, yeah, we did get some reruns on Nickelodeon after Saban bought the franchise back from Disney, not to mention the fact that the show has been released on DVD in America and Europe.
My hopes for this reboot film are very high since Chaim Saban is involved with it, as well as Lionsgate. And I guess it will be sticking true to the original since Saban created the original. And I don't mean the original in Japan, I mean the original in America. But you're with me that.
And I'm pretty glad that Saban's doing this film instead of Disney, because we all know what Disney tends to be like with well-known franchises.
We've got to have money.
And if you want to know my opinions of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie from 1995, I did enjoy it as a kid, and I still enjoy it today. I admit it's not 100% as good as the original show, but it's not terrible. I just class it as good. There's been a lot of rumours centering the reboot film, mostly with the casting and all that. I have no idea who they've rumoured to play the Rangers, because the lists they've shown are a bunch of actors that I've never really heard of. But I'm sure whoever they'll choose will do a great job at capturing the original spirit that the original actors had. One rumour I definitely know is the fact that Liam Neeson may be called in to voice Zordon. And I think that's a very good idea. I mean, Liam Neeson's gone from being a Jedi Knight, to being Ra's al Ghul, to being a bad cop in the Lego Movie. And I think he'd be the right choice for Zordon. But that's just me, I don't know. Maybe he is the right choice, maybe he isn't the right choice, but we'll have to wait and see. And it's also been rumoured that Tom Hardy is meant to play Goldar in the reboot films.
So basically, the guy who played
Unnecessary evil
is rumoured to play... That's an interesting choice.
The reason I say reboot films is because I reckon they're going to do a series of reboot films based on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. My guess is that the first one may be centering around how the Rangers got their powers and how the Green Ranger was created, and a possible sequel could center around the introduction of Lord Zed and the Thunder Zords, and a possible third one could be the introduction of Rita Revolto, as well as the introduction of the Ninja Zords. But that's just my theory. I don't know if they're going to make several films, but like I said, we'll have to wait and see.
I've gone on record a number of times by saying that Lord Zed is my favourite Mighty Morphin Power Rangers villain ever, as well as being the best villain in the franchise in my opinion. And I really hope that he's going to be in this reboot movie, because as I said, he's one of the best villains in the franchise.
And if they do introduce Lord Zed in the film, I'm not really sure if they'll bring back Robert Axelrod to voice him, but I don't know, we'll have to wait and see that as well. We all know that Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, was a pretty bad movie based off of the franchise. Even the Nostalgia Critic acknowledged that Turbo, a Power Rangers movie was a pretty bad movie, even though he wasn't a Power Rangers fan himself. But he did say that Power Rangers has its fans, and it's for the fans. But the Turbo film wasn't exactly up there with the other series, as well as the Turbo series. In fact, the Turbo series wasn't that popular either. So I think it's a very good idea that they're going to do a reboot film of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It's a show that I grew up with in the 90s, and it's a show that I'm happy to watch any time. And as long as the reboot project's in the safe hands of Saban, then I'm pretty sure they're going to stick to the original roots like it says they are.
However the reboot movie turns out, I'm sure it'll be better than Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie. But I'm certain that it'll be better than Turbo, a Power Rangers movie.
So as I've said many times, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers reboot movie is a great idea to me, and I look forward to seeing it in 2016. I know there are a bunch of Power Ranger fans out there who have their own opinions who haven't given them out yet. So whatever your opinions are, give them out and say what every other Power Rangers fan has to say.
I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks. Nice. tonight. Oh! Hang on. Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I've got one anyway. Well, it's October, so that means Halloween is upon us.
In the 90s, I always had a lot of things to look forward to on Halloween. Whether it be specials shown on Cartoon Network, new or original from Hanna-Barbera, or even the Simpsons Halloween episodes, Halloween always had something that I could look forward to.
And the first Halloween special we're going to take a look at tonight is Mickey's House of Mouse. Sorry, I meant Mickey's House of Villains. Easy mistake to make.
Mickey's House of Villains is a 2002 direct-to-video animated movie produced by the Walt Disney Company. It was a film adaptation of the popular Disney Channel animated TV series Disney's House of Mouse, starring Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Minnie Mouse, Goofy, Daisy Duck, and Disney villains that have appeared in past Disney productions. In fact, this was the first ever thing I ever watched that had something to do with House of Mouse.
So much like South Park Bigger, Longer and Uncut, if it wasn't for this movie, then I might not have got into the show. So what do I think of the movie now that I'm older? Well, we'll get into that when I tell you the story.
It's Halloween night at the House of Mouse, and a lot of the villains are showing up. Jafar has a trick in store for Mickey and his friends, but the villains have to wait until midnight for him to unleash it. Why?
Because it's more evil.
Even though I've only seen trailers for that film, I had to put that in somehow.
After a series of cartoons, old and new, Jafar, along with his new henchmen, Captain James Hook, Cruella de Vil, Ursula the Sea Witch, and Hades, take over the House of Mouse in a musical number, It's Our House Now, which is very damn catchy.
It's our house now. It's our house now. It's the fact you can't ignore. Shut the window. Lock the door. It's our house now.
All the other villains understandably join in on Jafar's plan. The hero's princesses and other Disney characters are trapped in the kitchen while Mickey and his friends are thrown out on the streets. They witness the house's name being changed to the House of Villains. And while Jafar is running the show, Mickey and his friends have to come up with a plan to get back inside the House of Mouse and take it back. Like the show, the film shows several Disney cartoons starring Mickey and his friends. In fact, these short cartoons make up more of the film than the actual plot of the villains. However, the title cards were edited out, unlike in the show. The classic cartoons were The Lonesome Ghosts, Donald Duck and the Gorilla, and Trick or Treat. And the cartoons from Mickey Mouse Works were Mickey's Mechanical House, How to Haunt a House, Dance at the Goofies, Donald's Halloween Scare, and the scariest Mickey and Minnie Mouse cartoon in my opinion, Hansel and Gretel. All your favourite characters from the show are here. Mickey Mouse, of course, is the one who runs the show and makes sure everybody gets entertained. Minnie Mouse is the one who makes sure that everything goes according to plan and that they don't go over budget and the show goes on. And of course in the beginning she was very concerned about the amount of villains in the house that evening.
There seems to be an awful lot of villains here tonight.
Aw, relax, Minnie. It's Halloween. I'm sure they're not up to any tricks.
And her fear was proven correctly when the villains took over. There's Goofy, the waiter, who's just there to do his job and be, well, goofy. Donald Duck, the greeter of the house, spends his time trying to scare everyone with his unscary devil costume, without much success.
Oh, take stupid pills this morning.
Daisy Duck is the receptionist, like in the show. And all your favourite Disney villains are here too. Jafar, Iago, Captain Hook, Hades, Cruella de Vil, Ursula, the list goes on. It may be no surprise to you that pretty much every original actor came in to voice the characters. The late Wayne R. White and his fiancée Russie Taylor voiced Mickey and Minnie Mouse. Bill Farmer voices Goofy. Tony Anselmo voices Donald Duck, just as good as the original actor I might add. Tress MacNeille, aka Dot Warner, voices Daisy Duck, the Queen of Hearts and the Fate. And one of my favourite actors of all time, Jonathan Freeman, returns to voice Jafar.
It's Halloween, you know, and with just the right touch.
And of course you've got Gilbert Godfrey as Iago.
Blah, blah, blah. Every year it's the same thing. Old talk and no play. What a bunch of dull villains.
And James Woods as Hades, as well as all the other original actors. And here's one interesting fact that you may or may not know. During the musical It's Our House Now, Hades' Sinning voice was provided by Rob Paulson, who you may remember as Yakko Warner in Animaniacs. Now his Sinning voice for Hades was so good that I didn't even know it wasn't James Woods. It's kind of like when Jim Cummins finished Be Prepared for Jeremy Irons after his voice gave out. It just sounded so much like James Woods I couldn't tell the difference, and I don't think anyone else could either.
Where everyone's a friend of mine!
And I love how they made Jafar the leader of the pack, because he's one of my favourite Disney villains. And it does injustice that Jonathan Freeman returns to play the character.
Outside the Walt Disney World night show, Fantasmic, this film was the first time we saw all the Disney villains put together. Around that time, anyway.
Now, if I do have any problems with this film, it's in a few minor areas. The first one is that Pete's barely in the film. In the show, Pete was basically the main villain, always trying to get the club to shut down in any way he can. But in this film, he's barely on screen. In fact, the only times you see him is when they're doing the Sonnet's Our House Now.
Since Pete was the main villain in the cartoon show, wouldn't it make more sense to have given him a bigger role in this film? But never mind, at least they did give him a cameo, and he was part of the catchy song It's Our House Now.
My other problem is the fact that not every villain in this film gets a lot of screen time. I mean, you do see every Disney villain from all the films that were around during that time, but not one of them gets as much screen time as Jafar, Iago, Hook, Hades, or Cruella de Vil. I personally think it would have been nice if they could have had some major scene in them, like say maybe Scar does a performance in the show, or I don't know, maybe Cruella de Vil does a performance like a fashion show or something. And personally, I also think that the film could have been a little bit longer. Like instead of just showing some cartoons, they could have shown some performances from various Disney characters like they did in the show. But like I said, those are just nitpicks, and it doesn't really come close to ruining this film.
I was in secondary school when this movie came out on video and DVD. So what do I think of it today, now that I'm like 20ish? Well, I still enjoy it. It's a really fun movie.
So understandably, after watching this film as well as Mickey's Magical Christmas Snowed In at the House of Mouse, I immediately tuned into the Disney Channel and watched every single episode of the House of Mouse. And I loved it. And I'm quite surprised that the show doesn't make any DVD releases. I mean, come on, Disney, can't you at least release this show since you're releasing a lot of other shows like Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers and DuckTales on DVD? But despite all the nitpicks, this is still a pretty badass movie. I mean, besides Fantasmic at Walt Disney World's Resort in Florida, this is the first time you see all the major Disney villains come together to do something. And I think it's also the first time the villains didn't do something that meant taking over the world or anything. They just wanted to run the club for themselves. I mean, that's a pretty new thing for Disney villains. Especially when they're led by Jafar, a man who's mad with power and just wants to take over Agrabah. Hell, Jafar was even nice enough to apologise to Minnie and her fans.
Sorry, Minnie, but we don't want to be dull villains on Halloween.
And even though the battle between Sorcerer Mickey and Jafar could have been a little bit longer, it still kicks ass today. I mean, who'd have guessed that Mickey Mouse in his Sorcerer's Apprentice outfit would have made Jafar piss his pants with fear?
I just love that look. He'd probably do this if he saw the ice cream cart rapist in Tom and Jerry the movie.
So overall, this film is a really good Halloween special, and I always looked forward to watching it every Halloween when I was a kid. And I still enjoy it today.
Now, you don't necessarily have to watch the show in order to enjoy this film. But if you're a first-time fan of House of Mouse, then I'd say watch the show before coming to this movie.
So if you want a Halloween filled with Mickey Mouse and every single Disney villain that was around during that time, then I'd definitely check this one out. It's worth the watch, especially if you loved Disney's House of Mouse.
I'm Dalek44, and now I'm off to watch this movie. Heath Ledger kicks ass in this film.
We don't want to be dull villains on Halloween.
best 3-something hours of my life ever. What am I talking about, you may ask? I'm talking about a lovable little train who has a life of his own. No, not that one. I'm talking about a train who lives in Wales. His name is Ivor The Engine. Ivor The Engine is a British children's animated TV series created by Oliver Postgate and Peter Furman's Small Films Company, the team that brought us other various classics such as The Clangers and Bavpuss. You know, that old cuddly toy of a cat that has that creepy as fuck yawn. Oh, that's fucking creepy. Seriously, it's so creepy it'd make me wet my pants if I watched that as a kid. I wouldn't introduce that to any of my kids. If I had any. Which I don't. It was filmed using stop-motion techniques. This animation involved using cardboard cutouts painted with watercolours, which gives it a very unique look. This was one of the few children's TV series I've seen that had Welsh characters in it, including Fireman Sam. Now here's a very interesting fact for some of you who may not know this already. The show was originally made for black and white television by Small Films in 1958, but was later revived in 1975 when new episodes in colour were produced for the BBC. The show was written, animated and narrated by Oliver Postgate. Peter Furman provided the artwork. The sound effects for the show were pretty simple. The sound of Ivor's puffing was made vocally by Postgate himself. The music was composed by Vernon Elliott, which would later on be released for a CD soundtrack release. The voices in the show were provided by Oliver Postgate, Anthony Jackson, and Olwyn Griffiths. Anthony Jackson provided the voices for Die Station, Evans the Son, and Mr. Dinwiddie. Now let's talk about the characters. Ivor is a little locomotive made by a rail traction company. Unlike real steam locomotives, Ivor has a mind of his own. He can drive himself, and, using his whistle, can speak. His fondest dream is to sing in the Grumblian District Choir Society, a dream that is realised when his whistle is replaced with 3 pipes from an old fairground organ. He becomes first bass in the choir, as well as providing them with a means of getting from place to place. Another interesting fact for you guys. The swapping of Ivor's whistle from the one whistle to the 3 pipes from an old organ wasn't seen in the coloured versions, it was seen in the original black and white versions. So in the coloured version we never get to see it. But, there you go. Ivor enjoys doing all sorts of things that people do. As well as singing in the choir, he likes visiting the seaside, making tea from his boiler and spending time with his friends. He is fond of animals and has several of them among his friends. He can be willful and disobedient at times, and he does often go off and do things on his own when he should be working. He dislikes shunting and turntables. You know, a bit like the tender engines from Thomas the Tank Engine. Yeah, you knew that was coming. Jones the Steam, aka Edwin Jones, is Ivor's driver. He is a cheerful and kind-hearted man who perhaps sympathises more than most railway staff with Ivor. Postgate and Furman describe him as an original engine driver who is there to cope with whatever needs to be coped with. People who are new to the era find it rather odd that he would talk to his engine. When not driving Ivor or helping the engine with his latest flight of fancy, he enjoys fishing and daydreaming. Die Station is the station master at Lanyard Station. He is a stickler for the regulations of the railway, but sometimes bends the rules to help his friends. His life is made a little bit difficult by the fact that Ivor really doesn't care much for regulations at all.
You know, Jones, there's regulations. Regulations about the conveyance of livestock.
Wow, he's almost as bad as the Fat Controller.
Die there is a stickler for regulations.
You could say that again, Jones.
Although he is often gloomy, he is a good person at heart. Evan Evans the Son is the choir master of the Grumblian District Choir Society. He is also Jones the Steam's wife's uncle. And I don't think we actually get to see Jones's wife in the show. At least I don't remember ever seeing her in any of the episodes. Mrs. Porty is a rich woman who often gets new hats sent all the way from London every week. She is also technically the owner of the railway, having bought it when the line was threatened for nationalisation. However, she doesn't bother much with the day-to-day running, and things remained the same after she bought it. Mr. Dinwiddie is a very odd and possibly insane miner who lives in the hills and digs for gold. He enjoys explosions and mining. In fact, his mine is full of gold, but as soon as he digs it up, he puts it back again. That's kind of funny, isn't it, for a gold miner? He often needs new boots pretty much every week. He is something of a scientist. He describes himself as
educated.
He has constructed a few odd devices, including a donkey carriage and a bubble-blowing machine. And now possibly the most popular character in the show, besides Ivor, is Idris the Dragon, a small red Welsh dragon who also sings in the choir from time to time. Having been hatched from an egg in Ivor's fire, he lives with his wife Olwyn and their twins Diane and Blodwyn in the volcano known as Smoke Hill. As well as singing, he proves useful by cooking fish and chips and for the choir using his fiery breath.
Am I the only one who thinks that Idris sounds like he was voiced by a woman?
Unfortunately, in the last few episodes, Idris runs into trouble when Smoke Hill goes cold and they need to keep hot in order to survive, since they're red-hot dragons. And I won't really give away how they do it, you'll just have to watch the show to find out for yourself. There's also Bluebell the donkey, who lives at Mrs. Porty's house. Like every animal in the show, she cannot talk, but she and Ivor just enjoys sitting around together. Bluebell is sometimes called upon to provide motive power. A fine example of this was from an episode when Ivor got derailed, and Bluebell had to run all the way back to the station to send a note to Di Station. So she proved very helpful to Di.
Donkeys on a railway. Who'd have thought it? Only this show.
And the show was so popular that a bunch of books based on the show were published in the 1960s. And 6 books based on the TV episodes were published in the 70s and reprinted in 2006 to 2007. Yeah, it was that popular that it ended up being written into books as well as a TV series.
In fact, I loved Ivor the Engine so much as a kid that my parents got me the books.
I ended up buying the complete collection of the show on DVD at a private railway station. And having watched it again after all these years, it's a lot more charming than I remember it to be. Not a lot of people realise this, but Ivor the Engine has a very nice Welsh charm to it. And as I mentioned, it's become so popular that it had books written based upon it, and the Battlefield Line Railway even has their own Ivor.
Seriously guys, Ivor the Engine is a great cartoon. Even though I wasn't born during the time it was created, I still enjoyed it in my childhood. I was introduced to it thanks to TV repeats and VHS releases.
It was charming back then, and it's still charming today. And I still get lots of laughs out of it, since a lot of it is based on comedy. I think it's kind of to do with how Welsh the characters are. And I'm not sure if Oliver Postgate or any of the other actors were Welsh, but their Welsh accents are pretty convincing. So yeah, if you want to watch another TV series about trains, then definitely watch this one. It may only have one steam locomotive. It's not just about the one engine who works on the railway, it's also about the several other people who work on the railway too.
So if you're a train lover or an animation lover of any kind, then you're going to love this show. It's got a lot of funny moments and a lot of charm to it.
So I definitely say check it out for nostalgia. It's a lovely, charming, nostalgic show with a great animation technique, and I always enjoy going back to it whenever I want to.
I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks.
Thank you.